This episode of Where Did the Road Go is brought to you in part by our Patreons. If you want to become a patron, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
All right, welcome to this Where Did the Road Go Roundtable edition. We have Roejen back after a long absence. Hello, Roejen.
Hello.
Timothy Renner.
Hello.
Melissa Martell.
Hey, everyone.
And Wren Collier.
Hi, everybody.
And tonight we're going to be talking about something that is going to probably upset a few people. But it's one of those things that I think needs to be addressed, and that is the kind of attitude of everything is demons. And I find, especially on YouTube, I get a lot of people who, anytime we do a show, it doesn't matter what it's about, it's demons. The answer is always demons. And this is not by any means to attack anyone's belief system. I think belief system plays a big part in this phenomena. So kind of to get us started, one of the things that, a lot of these, so there's, when we're dealing with this stuff, the reason it's on the fringe is because it's so hard to nail down. Like, if you have Bigfoot, if Bigfoot was simply a physical flesh and blood creature, by now we should have a body, whether it be alive or dead or something definitive, and we don't. That doesn't mean it's not a flesh and blood creature. But it means we can't say it really is because we don't know what it is because we don't have the evidence. We don't have the physical proof behind it. And that same thing goes for like UFOs, the people who push the whole ET thing. There's if you frame it right, sure, it looks like aliens are visiting. But if you take that framing out, it's not so crystal clear. And we don't have anything definitive. Even when UFOs leave something behind, yeah, it's anomalous. They've burned rings into the ground where nothing will ever grow there again. That's weird. We don't know what else would ever do that. But that doesn't mean it's extraterrestrial. The problem is, like, there's a difference between understanding something as an unknown and understanding that we know what something is. And obviously there are cases where someone is going to mistake a bear for a Bigfoot, but I don't think those are the common ones, especially when you're dealing with things like hunters and such. Am I correct on that, Tim?
I believe you're absolutely correct.
But a lot of times people, and we had done a show before on the Christianization of Bigfoot, and we talked about how, that's kind of worked its way into the Bigfoot field. And years ago, I was always confused when people who were very religious or very Christian would be interested in these subjects, and it kind of threw me. I think we actually did a show on it at one point. The reason it would throw me is, I think, thinking about this, growing up, I grew up in the whole satanic panic era, with people like Geraldo out there, oh, your kids are in league with Satan and all this other stuff. And so it kind of, made me feel like the stuff I was looking into is the type of stuff that if you're Christian, you kind of avoid. And over the years, I found that not to necessarily be true. And there are people who are religious who can bring that in, and it doesn't affect their view of the phenomena. But then there are the people who think that is the answer to the phenomena. That is, it's demons. Again, the easy out, that explains everything. If there's people missing in the woods, it's demons. If, you see a Bigfoot, it's a demon. If you have a ghost, it's a demon. And then everything's explained. I don't know.
I was just going to say, I think that's almost like a safe, easy black and white answer for people who rely on religion to sort of direct, their every thoughts.
And it takes it away from being an unknown, because if you believe in demons, then, well, you've answered this and stay away from it. Of course, then you got to wonder, why are those people listening to this show? If you're going to stay away from it, why are you listening?
The other side of that, I think, is if you're into this for any amount of time, and I've said this before on my show, I think I've said it on here too, you're going to have to come to terms with the fact that you're not going to solve the problem. You're probably not going to solve this. You have to accept that this is going to be a mystery. It has been a mystery since the beginning of time. It's going to continue to be a mystery. Your choices are to participate in the mystery or observe the mystery, but you probably are not going to solve it. And I think people get very, very frustrated with that. And I think you come to a point where you either accept that, you either accept I don't get to solve this, but I want to either participate or learn as much as I can, or like I said, it's a giant puzzle. Maybe I get to lay in a piece of the puzzle, but I'm never going to even see the whole puzzle. You're looking at the puzzle through a keyhole. But when you accept that, you inevitably go through a period of contemplation, if not depression. For me, it was a serious period of depression. I came out of the other side going, well, I'm interested in this stuff. I love this stuff. I want to continue to participate in it. So I'm going to accept that I don't get to solve it. I don't get to solve this. Now, I think some people, they come out on the other side and they say, I have to solve it, and I will turn to my religion then. And my religion, the solution my religion offers is demons.
And some people, their religion is like, that's what dictates their thoughts, and it couldn't be anything else. Like, the box is really small in which they think.
Yeah.
Like, it just literally couldn't be anything else. They couldn't fathom it.
Right. And those are the people that will look to the Bible as an explanation for it. Like, there are people who desperately look for Bigfoot in the Bible.
Literal.
Yeah, well, it's Nephilim. That's what they are. The Bigfoot are Nephilim, even though...
I was just going to say, what would they be in the Bible then? Because I don't see any direct references anywhere in the Bible to Bigfoot. So at that point, you have to grasp for straws to get something.
Yeah.
Right, but there are people who will outright tell you they are Nephilim, even though other biblical scholars will say, well, the Nephilim didn't survive the flood, so that's impossible. But these did. They did. Yeah. So yeah, it's a very strange way of trying to force things into the Bible. I think I don't believe the Bible has one-celled organisms in it, yet they accept those. I think.
It's almost like it's versus, very rigid thinking as opposed to people who are more open and fluid.
Well, I think fear plays into it too. I mean, people are afraid of things they don't understand, and if they can, put it into this context. And I think a lot of times when they're posting stuff like it's demons, they think they figured it out and they want to warn other people. It's not even like they're trying to be jackasses as much as they're legitimately concerned that people are being, usurped by this stuff. What they don't realize, because they've probably grown up with it their whole life, is that not everyone just believes in their belief system.
Yes.
They can be very smart people who, if you're raised with blinders on, you don't realize you've been raised with blinders on, and it's very hard to take those blinders off in any situation.
And that is why we have wars.
Yes, that's part of sort of.
Yeah, it plays into it.
And the other thing I always like to stress is this is not an attack on anyone's religion.
No, absolutely not.
No,
it's not. By saying this, by saying these things, we're not attacking your religion, your belief system. We're just saying that maybe these things just don't fit neatly into that. And I have suggested, people have written me personally, and asked, researching this stuff, is this a demon? Is this a demon I'm dealing with? And I often say, if your religion helped you and it helps you get through this stuff, by all means, cling to your religion. And I don't mean that in an insulting way. But no, I don't think that it's a demon. I don't. I don't know what else to tell people. I try to tell them, I'm not trying to tell you to go with your religion. I'm just trying to tell you that I don't think this is a demon.
Yeah. When I think of like belief systems and demons and people rigidly believing things, the one thing that always comes to mind is people's belief in Ouija boards, like right off the bat, and how everybody thinks that there are these horrible portals that are going to bring about demons. And I mean, I've used them and they've never even worked. I've never had that as an experience, but I will have people tell me that, no, it's evil, it didn't burn, like crawled across the room, or like just really elaborate stuff. And then I don't know if you guys remember that story about those girls who started getting all possessed. I can't remember what country it was in, but they were using a Ouija board on an app. And I don't know if you know like how code goes, but I'm pretty sure there wasn't a demon in the code. But they were all, hysterical, and it was like a mass hysteria. And so you can get this sort of belief that starts off like, oh, it's just evil, but then it sort of goes on and into this hysteria where people are like, it's like, it's almost like an infection in the mind.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I think Melissa's onto there that we should also state too. I mean, maybe it's good that these people think that they're demons and it scares them away from engaging with it. Because, I mean, and be honest with you guys, I mean, demons are real. Like, there are plenty of books that tell you their names and how to draw a magic circle and call them up and order them to do things. The thing is, if you're the kind of person who is so afraid of engaging with that aspect of the spirit world, then that you like see it hidden in everything. Like, you're not the kind of personality that can handle doing that kind of work, because you can't be afraid of them. Like, you have to engage with them, with confidence. And so, a person who is not mentally capable of handling that kind of situation shouldn't be messing with that kind of stuff. And if believing that literally everything is demonic keeps them away and keeps them mentally safe, then maybe it's a good thing.
So, see, I would attest that you would have to define demon before you could say demons are real. It's more that that's something that's been applied to. So, in my experience, I had dealt with an entity which took the name of a sort of not so well-known deity in a particular religion. And I knew nothing about this religion. So it took me a while to figure out what it was trying to identify itself as, because it didn't give me a name. It just gave me information, and I finally figured it out. But at no point did I believe that this was the actual deity.
Yeah.
I looked at it as, okay, what are you trying to tell me by identifying yourself with this deity?
Yeah.
It didn't make me convert to that. It didn't make me think, oh, this must be the right religion or anything else. It just said, okay, so this is something that's using this as a face, as a mask for some reason.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, I tend, when I use the word demon, I'm specifically referring to things, spirits that have been given that moniker in some sort of spirit catalog. And demon's a cool name, and it's very metal, and there's like I like that aspect of it. But I mean, if I'm summoning a goetic spirit, like, to me, that's a demon. And it doesn't mean that it's a demon. And I like you said, the spirits themselves, who knows what they actually are. But I have to also sort of handle it from a pragmatic standpoint. It's like, there's no way I can know if what it's telling me is its real name or what it really is.
Right.
But that's how it's engaging me, and I have to take it at face value. But still have my own doubts and my own thoughts about it. Obviously you shouldn't listen to everything something like that tells you.
No. Now the other thing is, I had a friend who was having some really bad sleep paralysis. And he's one of these people who one day cried to Jesus for help, and everything stopped. And it made him, it literally made him more religious. Like, he said, oh my God, this actually worked. There must be something to this. And that's a very understandable belief to have if you have that experience. Because I don't think he was particularly religious before that, but this stuff scared him so much. He wasn't into the unknown. Well, he's into some of the like UFOs and stuff like that, I think, but he's not, not into magic or anything like that. So the sleep paralysis stuff was really freaking him out, and he prayed to Jesus for it to go away, because I think someone told him to, and it worked. Everything stopped. And I understand why, if that's your experience, you're going to think there's something to this, that Jesus must be real. But at the same time, Wren, you had an experience where you did that very thing, and nothing happened.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a, in the vernacular, a witch riding my back. I had something jump on my back during a sleep paralysis / out of body experience, and I was trying to get it off. And I remembered that people did that, and they called upon Jesus, and I was like, oh, let's try it. And I said, like, in Christ's name, I order you off of me or whatever, and it didn't do anything because on a very basic level, I don't really believe that Jesus Christ was an actual person. So it was like,
Yeah.
it didn't work
I
for
was
me.
going to say,
Yeah.
was it a process of where your faith actually believed and you believed wholeheartedly in that faith that you were using that was kind of as a weapon of some sort? Or was it just something that you were throwing out there, but since you didn't have any faith in what you were saying, it's kind of like Salem's Lot, that movie Salem's Lot, where the guy holds up the cross to try to ward off the vampire. And it's like, that isn't going to work because you have no faith in that cross that you're holding.
Yeah.
So
I think that was it. Like, I mean, I didn't really believe in Christ. I was just kind of throwing it out there because I couldn't pull this thing off of my back. But what actually worked, what actually pulled it off my back is when I believed in myself. Like I said, I abjure you. Like, I tell you to get off of me. And, I said it with confidence, and then I was able to pull it off of me.
And then you ate it.
Yeah.
Let's not leave that part out.
I always find that when I have like more traumatic experiences happening in life, that like a shadowy figure will show up. And like it's almost like sleep paralysis. It's not a hag, but it's like a shadowy figure, and it's frightening, right? Like it's very scary because it usually comes while you're sleeping or in the middle of something. And the last time that I seen it, instead of getting frightened, I just looked at it and said, I can't. I'm not going to shout as loud as I shouted, but I basically just told it, you haven't been invited here, and it disappeared like easily. And it wasn't about what I called. It was about the feeling that I think I called up within myself. Like I was like, block, no way, you weren't invited here. This is my house. And it was gone real quick.
I mean, my theory about how that works is that when you're in that sort of state, like it's, you're half 1 foot into the sort of the imaginal realm, right? So your imagination and your confidence are all that matters there. So if you believe in yourself, if you believe that you can fly there, then you can fly. If you believe you can walk through walls, then you can walk through walls. And if you believe that you're an all-powerful dreamy god and this thing has no power over you, then it doesn't. It's just like at the end of the first Nightmare on Elm Street, when she tells Freddy Krueger, like, you don't scare me, you're nothing to me, and then he goes away.
Yeah.
So part of this, and I believe, Seriah, you can correct me if I'm wrong, one of the demon comments on YouTube was, in fact, in response to something I had said, that it doesn't matter your religion, that all religions work equally well in repelling this stuff. And someone got very upset at me for saying that. You read the comment to me. I forget exactly what it was, but he's called me a liar, basically. But I can't list the studies. I don't know the studies off the top of my head, but people have done studies, in particular with UFO abduction. And Jewish people, I think they did it with symbols hanging on bedposts. And the Star of David was just as effective as the crucifix was for Catholic people, and as the cross was for Christians, and ironically, as the pentagram was for Wiccans. So it seems to be belief that helps. Belief in something.
I was going to say, isn't that one of the basic tenements of being a practitioner of magic, is you have to have belief and faith and force of will to be able to do the stuff that you do for the most part? Or maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm not a practitioner of magic, but I've always been taught that for you have to have solid will and belief in what you're doing for it to have any kind of effect.
That's kind of interesting that you say that, because I had a witch send me this spell with little dolls that she made, and she gave all this elaborate stuff. I wanted to test it out and see, and she's a really good friend, and she had this elaborate ritual attached to it, and oils and colors of candles and these dolls and whatnot to put in specific things. And the last thing she said in the instruction was, but you have to believe that this works. Like, you have to do this every day, and it has to, if you don't believe this and you can't visualize it and feel it and breathe it while you're doing it, she's like, don't even bother.
I mean, she's right. It's not any specific religion, like Tim said. The religion doesn't matter. The religion is Dumbo's magic feather, right? It's whatever gives you confidence. in yourself, and it's whatever
it's a focus
dispels
is
your
what you're
doubt.
saying.
Exactly. So, like, I mean, and you don't have to even believe in one thing. You can believe in multiple things. As long as you have confidence in yourself and a force of will that comes from yourself, I feel like anything works.
And it was interesting that she was really not just believing it, but feeling it happening and experiencing it. Yeah. Not just saying, oh, I believe that. Yeah. But actually, in the moment when you're doing this ritual, visualizing the results and actually feeling it coming and experiencing it like to the fullest.
Yeah, that's one reason that a magical practice that I've heard different writers talk about doing is just taking on different personalities, like learning how to be an actor, like learning how to one day be an entirely different person than you were the day before and the day after, like taking on new masks and new personas, because you need to sort of get yourself in a mind state when you're doing that kind of work that this is real and this is like my reality at the moment, because your doubt will ruin it. It will.
Yeah. And I mean, imagine if you really believe and you're reenacting your fear and you're playing over and over again that there's a demon, or like you could put some intense power into that and make it pretty real for you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some people create their own demons.
Yeah, that's true.
So this reminds me of something. If you guys, I'm gonna tell a little bit of a story here real quickly, if you guys have got a second.
Sure.
I know of a person who sat in on an exorcism, and he, when they conduct an exorcism, the church is required to have a non-involved third party there, an impartial person, if you will, for legal reasons, to make sure that they have a witness that nothing crazy, or well, I shouldn't say nothing crazy, but nothing illegal or anything happened like that. And they had to sign non-disclosure agreements. They had to go through all these studies and tests for mental fitness and all these kind of things. Long story short, this person sat in at this exorcism, and they had said that you'll know when the exorcism is over, because right before it ends, you will experience a sensation that you are going to die. And they had said that as the exorcism was going on, they actually had to bring other people from different faiths in to assist with it. They had a Buddhist come in, and there was a rabbi that was also there. And I thought that was really, really strange. And they said, well, even though these are all ultimately different religions, they're all kind of playing for the same team. So they all have something to give and take and add to the equation. Each person holds a certain key, if you will, to this. And I thought that was really strange. And they're like, yeah, they don't talk about it, but they've got a person there that's like just hangs out outside the door. So if hey, we need creamsicles at 4:00 in the morning, this guy can go get creamsicles or whatever. But he had said, yeah, they had to bring in a Buddhist and a rabbi to assist with this. I believe that's what they were, but they were people of other faiths outside the Catholic faith to assist with this. And from what I understand, the way it was explained to me, like, for example, you had the demon on your back, which is very reminiscent of Japanese folklore. There's the recurring story of a ghost on your back and so forth and so on. Their religion doesn't work the way that Christian faith works. So it was explained to me that sometimes you have to have the proper part A to go against part B. So it's again, it's one of those things where it comes down to, it seemed like it's more of just because you're a Christian and you might be dealing with something that's not Christian at all. And if you try throwing your Christian mumbo jumbo at it, or Santeria or whatever, it might not have an effect because it doesn't come from that thing. And as I often say, I hope I'm making sense right now.
I would think
it makes sense. Yeah.
I would think if you were dealing with something like that, it might actually be a tulpa somebody created.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's very possible.
And you know, Roejen, like, I mean, the idea that these things have some sort of external reality to them, and they're not, like different creatures or different spirits or entities could have cultural folklore associated with them so strongly that you're only able to communicate with them in some sort of cultural context makes sense to me.
Yes, exactly. I tend to wonder if this is something like the nature of this phenomena, because I'm from the school of thought where I very much I don't have a problem with like UFOs being physical craft alien creatures, but I also don't have a problem that it's something else as well that likes to mimic these kind of things. It's like, oh, you want to see a UFO? Okay, fine, I'm a UFO. Oh, you want to see a demon? Okay, I'm a demon. It's I think it's part of the nature of some of this stuff to be able to manifest and screw with people in a way that it's going to feel necessary to get the best results, or just for whatever reason it does, just to have fun with you and screw with you for the most part. So, and us being human beings and having a kind of three-dimensional view of possibly a fourth dimensional thing, for lack of a better term, we can only grasp so much based on in the world and the experiences we have and the way we're raised and religious concepts and so forth, that if this thing is something out there that's something other, it's like, all right, well, I'm just going to screw with you this way, and okay, you can believe, fine, you can throw the power of Jesus Christ at me, sure, whatever, yeah, okay,
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to wonder if this is also just something that's the nature of the other, or whatever you want to call it, that does this kind of thing.
Certainly possible.
Sometimes, I wonder too if you try to do something to an energy, if it's real, if it actually might enrage it, and kind of feed it. Like sometimes if you give something attention and lots of focus and you're focused on it, and you kind of feed it, and then you get afraid of it, and then you try to get rid of it. And I don't know. I think,
it could be the nature of that particular thing. Again, we since we don't know entirely what we're dealing with and what the nature of any of this really is, therefore it kind of almost throws everything on the table at that point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why I'm like, okay, so if they do announce that UFOs are real, that just takes away that small piece of the puzzle. Everybody goes, no, that can't be happening. That can't be real because UFOs are this. They could be that. And it's like, well, no, not necessarily. If they come on and say UFOs are real, that just takes away that one piece of the puzzle that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away everything. It just narrows the field down just a little bit more,
Then when you look at the demon thing and you have people saying they're possessed, then you go look at a case that, like the Annalise girl who she had possible like epilepsy and stuff like that. So it's like that's another example of wrongly interpreting demons when it could be something medical or something that a behavioral or I've also had people tell me they have a demon following their family, and when I start talking to them, you realize they have like horrendous abuse in the family and they've blocked it off, and they're trying to tell they have a lot of behavior problems and they're trying to pass it off as a demon. It's sort of easier for them to deal in that way than it is for them to say, I had a really, really awful background.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to people about that as well, and I maybe it is better for them to deal with it in that way than it is to talk about what actually happened. Maybe that would be too much. So maybe it's easier.
Possibly.
Yeah.
When you mentioned the shadow, it brought back to mind the experience I had with I've dealt with a lot of shadows. For the most part, they've not done anything negative, and the one that I think people would take as negative, I didn't take it that way, was I had watched the shadow move across my lawn, and it moved right up to me. It was like a ball on the ground, but it was like flat to the ground, and it just moved right up to me, and I got the impression it wanted to actually come into me, and I said, sure, go ahead. I didn't know if it was real. Like, I had serious doubts whether or not I was actually just imagining this. And so it moved into my feet and just disappeared. And I went, all right, well, that was something. I didn't really feel anything or, whatever. But over the next few weeks, I found my moral compass kind of drifting a little bit. And
you are the only guy I know that would welcome some weird shadow creature across the ground and just say, yeah, sure, hop on, need a ride. I don't know of anybody else that would do something that crazy. You're just like, yeah, sure, why not?
Part of it is I thought it was just in my head. It was dark out. I thought I was imagining it.
These aren't pets, Seriah.
Hey, they might be.
You never know.
But anyway, so I noticed my moral compass kind of drifting a little bit, and I started thinking about it. I'm like, I let that shadow in. What's going on here? And so I walked back outside that night, same area, and I basically told it, get out. And I watched it move out of my feet and shoot across the lawn, and I went, son of a bitch. I'm like, either my imagination planned this out ahead of time, or that was something actual there, but it left.
Did it have any effect? Like, did you notice, like, when it came in, was it only a short period of time, like, before you told it to leave, or did you see any kind of weird thing happening?
It wasn't very long.
Okay.
Because as soon as I noticed that, like I said, that moral compass thing, as soon as I noticed, me thinking things were, certain things were okay that I wouldn't normally think were okay, I'm kind of going, wait a minute, what's going on here?
I
Like
getcha.
something is affecting my moral compass, my way of looking at things.
Have you ever noticed that, like, sometimes, like, if you were around certain types of people, like, they have like a negative, they have an energy that will start influencing your thoughts and your, like, how you behave? Have you ever had that experience?
No, but other people have had that with me, although it's not negative, it's usually positive.
I've had that with a positive, and I've had that with a negative, where somebody's energy actually started making strange things happen in my house that
Huh.
weren't there before, and they were trying to tell me my house was haunted, and I'm like, hey, everything was fine until you were here.
I had a friend who was really nice girl. This was a long time ago. Really nice girl, but very, very shallow. She was rich. She, had just never been exposed to much. And after spending some time hanging out with me, her personality changed. Like, she got deeper. She stopped caring about going shopping all the time. Like, that stuff just didn't matter to her anymore. And her friends actually tried to have an intervention.
Oh.
Because they thought that I was somehow brainwashing her because she was no longer interested in the stuff they were interested in, which was, mostly going shopping and things like that. And I remember one of her friends coming upstairs during this whole thing. This happened at a party, and her friend comes up and goes, so let me tell you what's going on downstairs. And then she laughs. She goes, I think you're the best influence she's ever had, but hey, whatever.
Well, that's
So
a
I
good
have
thing.
Yeah.
I have a recent story. This happened very recently that, depending on how you look at this, people will either say, aha, that confirms it. It is demons. Or it's all belief-based. So this is and this is the first time this has happened in years. It was, as I've talked about on here before, my sort of abduction experiences, like where I don't leave the bed kind of thing. So I'm in a dream state, and I am looking up. I'm on the top of a very high hill, and I'm looking up, and I saw something in the sky, which I thought was like a radiator. I'm looking like, what is that? And suddenly it comes down very quickly and fills the entire sky. So this is, at this point, I realize this is some sort of craft. And anyone who has gone through the abduction experience knows there's a certain feeling that kind of, like, you can tell it's coming on when it's coming on. Often you can't move. Sometimes you can't speak. It's very, very strange, but it's a very certain kind of feeling. And I started getting this feeling, and I rolled over onto my stomach, and I started saying the Hail Mary. Now, I grew up Catholic. I started saying the Hail Mary, and I woke up audibly saying the Hail Mary. It was very, very strange. So I wake up from this dream, and I'm audibly saying, like, in the middle of the prayer, saying the Hail Mary. Woke up, and that's all that happened. Now, you can look at that and say, well, there it is. Catholicism works. Catholicism must be the answer. It drove it away. Or you can say, well, Tim has believes he's culturally Catholic, and he has an experience with this growing up, and that's what he leaned on at that moment, and it helped him, but it may not help, Seriah or Wren.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Actually, I had a weird experience right before we did this. I was utterly exhausted and laid down for a nap. And by and large, if I try to take a nap, even if I'm dead exhausted, outside the time I normally sleep is when I'm most prone to having, like, sleep paralysis. And I'm sure there's probably something to that because my body's normally awake at that time, type of thing. I don't think that's all that unusual. But in this case, it wasn't so much sleep paralysis. There was a little bit of sleep paralysis, but I was literally, and I would call it hallucinating every time I closed my eyes. It was something that I don't think has ever happened before. Like, literally every time, as soon as my eyes closed, I'd start hearing things and like very specific things. It wasn't like vague things in the room or anything like that. My bedroom, the wall is against the entranceway. So if people come into the house while I'm asleep, I can hear it crystal clear. Like, there's just a thin wall there. And I was hearing people come into the house and going, oh, they're waking me up. Okay. And then I'm like, wait. And at one point, I think it was my dad, and I thought, wait, he's dead. Why am I? And I forced myself awake, and a couple of times I had a hard time forcing myself awake, and then it would be gone, and I'd be like, okay, that was weird. And as soon as I closed my eyes, it would start up again, and I'm like, what is going on, and why am I not being allowed to take a nap? There was one point where my cat jumped up on the bed and laid down against me, and I thought, who let the cat in the room? All right, well, that's fine. She's not waking me up. She's just laying there. And then my friend came in and started shaking me, and I was like, what? Why can't I wake up? And then I woke up, and none of that was happening. And I was like, okay, all right. So what's going on with my brain right now that it's causing these weird sort of half sleep paralysis type moments that are almost like hallucinations, you know?
Well, it's certainly demons.
They're right. Of course it's demons.
I don't know, therefore demon.
Default.
Therefore faithful.
Right, yes. If it was Josh, it would be faithful.
Exactly.
I don't know. It could be faithful.
Well, there are also, and if Josh were here, I'm sure he'd say something about it. There are also instances of people having encounters with fae folk and them invoking their faith, you know,
Yes.
and pushing them back.
Yes.
So
Oh, absolutely.
that's a very common thing too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There are people who've seen Bigfoot and cried to Jeebus and driven off Bigfoot. You know, it's a very common thing.
Yeah, because like I mentioned before, I think these things inhabit some sort of realm of imagination or information.
And
So-
not imagination as if they're being made up.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, as in like sort of the world that they live in that kind of overlaps with ours is not material in nature. It's more a mental world, if you will. So your mental state and your confidence and your sort of mental willpower mean more there than any sort of material aspect of yourself.
And speaking of that, I don't know how many stories actually not, I wouldn't say stories, but people's own encounters of like near-death experiences where they go and they have this experience where they're in a void or something hellish and they call upon Jesus and he pulls them from an actual Jesus figure, or a voice appears and pulls them from that. But then somebody else has a completely different experiences where there's no Jesus involved.
Yeah.
So what's that like? What's that? I'm actually really fascinated by the near-death experience. And there's Muslims who say they have a Christian experience. There's Christians who say they have a totally different experience. The near-death experience really fascinates me.
Yeah, the whole going towards the light thing is
Yeah.
not as common as everybody thinks it is. When you say
No.
near-death experience, everybody goes, "Oh, did you see the light? Did you hear?" Like my co-host, well, he was on this show actually talking.
Yeah,
about his
he had a
experience.
very unusual near-death experience.
What was that? Sorry.
It's a whole
It's too
whole
long?
show.
It's
Yeah,
a-
it's
Yeah,
it's a whole show.
It's a long
Anyways,
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, a friend of mine recently had a near-death experience, and there was no tunnel of light or anything in her experience. She just was kind of out of body, and she saw things happening around the operating table and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there
that's
wasn't
another
really,
one.
Yeah, there wasn't anything
Yeah.
particularly supernatural about the experience until
think it's-
afterwards.
Like a lot of people with that near death, some people they're just out of their body and everything's fine, but it's those people who have this weird hellish like experience where something's trying to lead them away from the light. Like it's almost like a diversion, or they're caught in some void or somewhere where they're afraid, and they get so afraid that they have this default cry to Jesus or something, and he appears, and I'm not sure. I read a lot of things on near-death experience that say that, really you're out of the body and you're manifesting stuff with your mind. And so if you're not aware of what's going on, then you could by default be, just grabbing onto the first thing that comes to your mind, which is Jesus save me. And I always thought maybe perhaps when you're going through that near-death experience and it's a negative thing, you might be going through something in your own belief system or in your own mind or in your own consciousness or something that you've been feeling guilty about. You
Sure.
actually going through it, and you're calling upon something higher that sort of pulls you out.
Yeah,
And it
I-
might, yeah.
I mean, like something that the both Buddhist tradition and Egyptian religion were really focused on was sort of like what happens like when you die, not just like what happens after you die, but about the actual process of death, like the first 5 minutes when you're dead. Like, what do you do? Where do you go?
Right.
And they were very concerned with kind of teaching people how to die, and I think that's something in the West we don't hardly even think about it, much less are prepared to deal with it when it actually happens. I think that's why so many people, when they have a near-death experience, they're so confused or lost, or things that may be lurking nearby take advantage of that confusion, and they have these experiences because they don't know what to do. I mean, Robert Monroe talked a lot about, and in Journeys Out of Body, when he was having out-of-body experiences, seeing people who had obviously died and were kind of just like had no idea what was going on. They're running around like trying to make phone calls, like they were confused, and they would see him and they would try to ask him questions about what the hell was going on, what's happening to me. And that's something I've been trying to tell people too. I mean, not only do you need to prepare yourself for your physical life here, it's also important to think about like the process of your own death and like how you're going to handle that when it happens.
You sound like you're talking about the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
Yeah, exactly. That same process, like how to die correctly. I think it's just as important as how to live correctly.
It says on the book, I actually have a copy of it here. It says this is a book for people who are dead or are dying.
Yeah, it's just like the manual they get in Beetlejuice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things about the near-death experiences is that people like aside from the out-of-body part, which I think is very important to note, that these people are having experiences while their brain is essentially dead and remembering them, because it tells us a lot about memory and how we exist outside of our, apart from our body. The fact that people have that sort of morphic experience afterwards that often fits with their belief, not always, but I think it more likely is that it fits with their deeper belief. So if you've been raised Christian, even if you say you're an atheist, that Christian archetype has been kind of branded into your brain from birth. So you might have a near-death experience and see Jesus, and then you're going, why am I seeing Jesus? I don't believe in Jesus, but that's because that's what that deep down you've had, sort of constructed inside of you.
Yeah.
And the same thing with prayer. People will say, well, prayer works. It's been proven. It's like, yes, they have proved prayer works essentially, that, people do tend to get better if they're prayed for versus people who are not prayed for. If it's actually prayer doing it, it also doesn't seem to matter who they're praying to. Like, it doesn't matter what religion they are.
Oh, you're going to get a comment on that one. That same guy, he's going to get you on that.
But it does, it is one of those things where it seems to be the power of belief. If it is actually the prayer doing it, like I said, it's hard to say for sure. It could be that, well, this person knows there's a lot of people who care about them and they're more likely to get better than someone who doesn't realize that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's hard to definitely equate that to prayer, but let's assume that prayer does work. It seems to be independent of what the actual belief system is.
Yeah, I mean that's the point. I mean I guess that's the point with all of this, right?
Yeah.
That it's yes, it works, right? But it doesn't necessarily matter who's on the other end of that telephone line.
It's whoever you believe is.
Yeah.
And
Or
it's
just that believe in yourself. I mean, I think we can make the assumption here that people can affect the material world through thought. And if using some sort of religious framework makes that easier for you to do, then by all means use it.
Everybody, my mother decided to call.
We'll put her on
that. No, I put her on.
Thoughts.
I put her on mute. I'll call her
Mom, I
later.
can't talk right now. We're discussing belief.
Come on, Mom.
Oh, speaking of before I
I
forget,
must have been thinking about her.
There you go. What were you going to say, Wren?
I was going to tell Tim before I forget. You know how people always have trouble like shooting Bigfoot with like physical weapons?
Mm-hmm.
So here's how we're going to bag a Bigfoot. We're going to just treat it exactly like it and just like hold out our fingers and be like, these are
Mind
guns.
bullets.
Yeah, we're just going to be like with our fingers, and that's going to drop a Bigfoot.
It has as much chance of working as physical bullets. I truly believe that.
Yeah.
But when you look at all this stuff, this is part of the reason that I think, Tim, you say we're never going to solve it. I don't know that we're never going to solve it per se. I think it is a gateway to a better understanding of our reality. Because through most of the Industrial Revolution on, we've kind of ignored this stuff for the most part. Like it's been there in bits and pieces, but it's always been taken in a very materialistic bend. And I think the key is that there's something else that we're missing, and this stuff holds the key to figuring out what that thing is.
I think solving it that's probably not the best word to use.
We may figure something out about it that we did not know. Anyone could. I mean, someone who just gets into this stuff might suddenly have a different way of looking at it and say, why hasn't anyone done this? And it's like, oh my God,
Yeah, well, you can use it more effectively when you understand the underlying mechanisms that make it work.
Yeah.
That's how magic has gotten to the point it is now in terms of effectiveness. I mean, that was the whole point of chaos magic, was that, let's forget about all the ritual, let's forget about all the fluff, and let's figure out what works, what seems to make it work, and let's refine those techniques until, we get to the point where we can just mentally manipulate matter and energy.
Which is also... Go ahead.
There's a little bit of that, like the sort of attitude with chaos magicians, which I see in the paranormal world too now, where it's like, well, quantum physics is going to solve this stuff, and then science will accept it, and then the scientists will love us and love me, daddy, science, please. And where I think the minute you get a handle on this stuff, I think it's going to sidestep and slither away.
Well, I think what Seriah brought up, the point about the sort of shift since the Industrial Revolution, is very important because, I mean, from my sort of socialist view, I think it is a program of capitalism. In order to extract more labor from the workers in that system, you have to kill their imaginations. You have to make them think that their entire life is their 40-hour work week and all the labor that they can have extracted from them. And I believe that's been a project, not only of material science, but of sort of capitalist forces over the last several hundred years in sort of destroying the imagination of the people in society, of telling them that there's no such thing as magic. You have no real control over your life. Just listen to us, work for us, and, we'll give you scraps.
Isn't that the nature of religion, though, too? Like, when you think about it, religion basically, we've stated this before on my show, that religion basically is magic. It's all ritual.
Yes.
It's just a matter of where you're pulling your power from. It's basically all it is. And I've always thought of religion as crowd control, where spiritualism is something you're doing for yourself. But when you got religion is a way to control the masses. It's like, all right, no. We want you to do this for this and give us money for our church.
Yeah.
Don't go home and do this stuff on your own, because that leads to the bad thing. That leads to, then you're getting the Yoda talk about the dark side of the force,
That's sort of how they direct all the energy and, manifestations their way.
Yeah. When you sit back, it's like, what you're all doing ritual. It's all ritual. It's all magic in one form or another.
Well, the thing is, it's the priestly class that's doing the ritual. I mean, that's the important thing to remember. And in religions that have sort of this priestly hierarchy, they're saying that, you can't have a direct connection with God. You have to go through us. Even though we're humans too, we're no better than you. We're somehow able to connect with God, and you have to go through us. You have
just
to confess
a little
to
bit
us.
better. Yeah.
You have to give us money. Yeah, you can't do stuff on your own.
Well, all I can say is from experiencing and just doing trials with a couple of these sort of rituals that I've been given and being intense about it, I can say I was skeptical before, but I do believe in something about it. But I also believe that I'm doing this, but I also have to step out of the way of how I think it's going to manifest. And I could see, like, I could start doing these rituals and start saying all these things and see bad things happening. Go, oh no, it's not working. But those actually bad things are removing the blocks. Like some of the rituals that I was given was like, one was like a road block remover, like removing all the obstacles. And then one was about the actual manifestation. And sometimes when you're like, you know, you're doing these belief things and you think it's all got to be positive and rosy, but sometimes removing the blocks is it's a hard journey, and then you sort of have to step out of the way and just let things happen and accept it, and then perhaps what it is that you want sort of shows up. So if you sort of stop just because negative things are happening, or and then you can say, oh, it's a demon, but it could be that things are falling apart just to remove, you know, to remove bad things that are happening. And that's what I've actually learned, is that when shit hits the fan, sorry for that language, but sometimes that means, you know, it's I've done this roadblock removal ritual thing that I was given, and it's actually removing stuff. It's like that was an obstacle rather than that it's a demon or something like that.
Well, and when I dealt with that shadow, you know, I didn't look at it as like, oh my God, this thing tried to possess me. I looked at it as like, this thing was almost like a self-check mechanism. You know, it's like, oh, well, it kind of solidified my moral ground because it challenged it, which, of course, if you look at the actual name of Satan, that means it means the tempter and the adversary, yes. But the whole concept is to tempt, you know, he tempts Christ to, you know, to test his faith, to keep him on that straight path. And I feel like this thing I interacted with did that very thing. Like, it tested my moral fiber in that sense. Like, is this really what I believe? How easily can this be changed? And I learned that, oh no, it's there. It's solid, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, you bring up a point there that we tend to try to put moral frameworks onto the spirits and entities that they probably have no reference point for. I mean, things like good and evil are very human constructs that relate to our culture and sort of our senses of empathy and like social responsibility. But these things are essentially alien to us in the truest sense of the word. You know, they're not from here. They're from a completely separate place. They have no frame of reference. They're not good or evil. And those things are human things, and they're not humans.
Right. That's a very good way of putting it. And they might even be us on some level, but if they are, they're on a very alien level to what we normally understand to be us.
Yeah, I mean, do you think an ant understands a human being's actions as good or evil? You know, it's like, to them, you're just some sort of capricious god creature that stomps around and kind of does whatever you want. Like, you know, you tend to not even consider them most of the time, or even think about them, except when they directly impact you. And I think we have to think of the spirits in that sort of sense. You know, they're almost Lovecraftian in that regard.
Yeah,
you know, they're like, they don't have knowable thoughts. I mean, that's what rituals are for. That's what a goetic summoning ritual, I believe, is for. It gives them a framework and a context through which they can communicate with us, because otherwise they're so alien that communication would be impossible.
I would say that's probably true. I forgot what else I was going to say. All right. What were we talking about just a moment ago? There was something, there's been about 5 different things that have popped through my mind, and I, you know, as the thing goes on, I forget what they are.
Let me add on to something that he just said. There's always this conversation about if we encounter alien life, or when alien life visits this planet. As human beings, we tend to be very narcissistic and very much like we want to apply everything that we are and what we do to everything around us. And if we did have alien contact, it is alien contact. It's very much like you said about the ants or like dolphins. Their sense of being, their moral compass, whatever they are, because they're alien and because they are what they are, might be so vastly different than what we are. Like, we have this tendency to want to impose everything that we are on. Oh, look, the dog, it's smiling, blah, blah, blah. You know, we want to impose our human existence and our emotions and all this stuff onto other creatures. Whereas, much like you were talking about with spirits and things like that, if these things are real and if these things do exist, they are alien, and they're not going to think that they're going to have the same moral compass thinkings and ideas and behaviors and moral contexts and things like that as we do, in my opinion, is very asinine. Yeah, it's as human beings, we're like, well, everything has to be like we are because we're human beings and we are the pinnacle of all existence. And these things might not be like that at all, for whatever reason. Even when you're talking about, like, let's go biblical and talk angels and demons. The thing that separates us from angels is that we have free will. And this is something that these other creatures aren't supposed to have. And that was the big thing about part of being human is, as humans, you have free will. And we're always trying to impose these things onto other things, and they're just not going to function that way. And I don't think that people think about things in those terms.
Yeah, I mean, there's creatures on our own planet that are essentially completely alien to us. Like octopuses, not many people know this, but an octopus's nervous system is distributed throughout its entire body.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have a central brain. Like, each individual octopus's arm has as much brain, like nervous system material in it as it does in its head. So is each octopus arm like a different living creature? Is it a communal entity? Like, we don't know. I mean, and if we can't even communicate with an octopus, something that evolved on the same planet as us, like, why would we assume that we could even understand or even realize that we're talking to an alien? I mean, I think it's the big thing. If we ever end up actually meeting a true, like, extraterrestrial being, we probably won't even know that it's an extraterrestrial being. Like, we probably won't even recognize it.
I think it's, we're so used to seeing people through the eyes and the face. It's such a human thing. Like, the soul is in the eyes, and look in their eyes. And a lot of our consciousness comes through the eyes and how we can read people. Obviously, the rest of the body too. But there's obviously something about the eyes. So we are really unfamiliar with experiencing that, things that if we look in its face, we're looking for it in its face. And I think we're just so used to that concept that, it's really hard to think of anything else. I certainly find that in myself. Like, I'm looking in people's eyes to see something about them.
Now, this is what leads on the slippery slope to, inadvertently, this is where all these conversations always end up going is, well, what is consciousness then?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
because that's where we're going.
But what she's saying too is why when you see like a faceless entity, it's really, really creepy. There's a band we've had play the last exit a couple times called For the Dead Travel Fast, and they wear stockings over their faces. So the vocalist has a white one, all the other musicians have a black one. So they're essentially faceless. And so many people have been like, that is so creepy. And it's like, well, why is it creepy? Because you can't see their eyes. If they covered everything but their eyes, I don't think it would be as creepy.
There's a band like that called Amino Acids. It's around here from Detroit. That's the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It comes down to old school survival instinct for us too. I mean, we look at a predator's eyes to understand like what it's going to do, or like to try to anticipate its actions.
Yeah.
So something not having eyes, like not giving us, like, a lot of people don't realize how many sort of like body language clues that we like subconsciously pick up on and react to, even if we're not consciously aware of it. And the lack of those is profoundly disturbing to us.
Yes. And I excuse me. And I know when I want to make when I'm making a deep connection with someone that means a lot to me, I'm going to stare into their eyes. Like, and so for me, something with no eyes, I'm like, whoa, I can't even connect. I can't connect to that person. But like, if I have someone, I have a really deep feeling, like I feel like they're my significant, like my soul, I'm going to look right into their eyes. And if I can't, I'm like, I don't even know. I'm like, woo, I don't trust it.
Yeah, I mean, this is why poker players wear sunglasses. This is why we get so creeped out by CG characters in movies, because that uncanny valley thing, because they don't have all the micro expressions. Every moment a person's face is making thousands of micro expressions that you don't even consciously pick up on. But subconsciously, you see all of those things, and you're processing all of those things in your brain.
And I can't believe I found this quote, too, when you mentioned ants. There was a quote from Babylon 5. Jakar says, there are things in the universe billions of years older than either of our races. They are vast, timeless, and if they are aware of us at all, it is little more than ants, and we have as much a chance of communicating with them as an ant has with us.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big point in the Brother Strugatsky novel, Roadside Picnic, where these, this extraterrestrial race visits Earth, and they stay for a little while, and then they leave behind a bunch of junk, trash basically, and people are like, there's like this whole black market, and people, going into these areas that they visited and like stealing this trash and selling it. But it's all like super dangerous. There's radiation. Some things like make your bones melt, but people still do it. And the analogy is that these aliens treated Earth as if humans on a roadside picnic. You know, when you have a picnic in a park, you might leave all this trash behind that you don't even think about all the little creatures or ants or whatever that might be killed or hurt by it, or it'll interfere with their life because you don't think about them. You're so far beyond them on a consciousness level that you don't even notice them.
Yeah, the rest of the quote goes, as much chance communicating them as an ant has with us. We know, we've tried, and we learned that we can either stay out from underfoot or be stepped on.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons, I think Stephen Hawking, got a lot of crap for saying that, we shouldn't be sending radio transmissions out into space.
Oh, yeah.
We shouldn't be broadcasting where we are, because I think that's a real danger. We assume that any extraterrestrial race that we come upon will be like A, benevolent, or B, like see us as any sort of conscious equal, enough to communicate with. Like, just think about all the horrible things we do to animals on our own planet that are nearly as smart as us, like pigs and cows.
Not like that. Think about what we do to each other.
Yeah, what we do to each other. So it's like, why do we assume that that's going to work out if we run into an alien civilization? Like, I mean, the idea is personally terrifying to me. I'm a person who deals with spirits and demons, and they're not nearly as scary to me as an alien.
Well, I think we hope the aliens would be smarter than us, honestly. I think that's generally the hope, that these things would be much smarter than us and able to deal with us better than we can deal with ourselves. But not, it's also...
Do you want to put your cards on the table for that, though? I mean, you willing to go all in on that one?
Sure. I also think it's ignorant of us.
Asking this question too.
I also think it's ignorant of us to think that there is like that things like radio waves, like we do everything based on our tech. Let's send out radio waves. Well, there's plenty of. I'm sure there could be life in our solar system on say Jupiter, and it might not resemble anything we know as life. Mm-hmm. And thus it doesn't communicate the same spheres that we communicate in.
Yeah.
We would never know it was even there, and it may not know we're here.
It makes a huge assumption that an alien civilization would be using radio waves at all.
Yeah.
And, I've said before, too, I have the personal sort of belief that we have encountered, actual extraterrestrials, except in a psychic or sort of thought form rather than because if I'm a person who believes in out-of-body experiences, and in that sort of state, things like time and space don't mean anything. You can travel as far as you want, and there's no reason to think that an equally intelligent or more advanced civilization wouldn't also have that sort of mental technology as well. So why would they build spaceships when they could just project themselves here?
One of the few predictions that Jane Roberts Seth made was that, I think it was in 2001, we would have the first contact with extraterrestrials, but we wouldn't recognize it because it would happen on a psychic level, and it would be someone in Australia that made this connection to another extraterrestrial being somewhere else in the universe. But we wouldn't even know that it had happened. Mm-hmm. And what was the other thing you just said that triggered a thought? I don't know. I forgot. That was one, but there was something else you said before that also triggered something. I don't remember what it was. Damn. May come to me in a moment.
Well, going back to the demon thing, this is a thing that I think Tim can talk more about, and I want to hear his opinion on it. I think we listen to some of the same shows, and something I've heard a lot about is the idea of some of these creatures like Dogman or Bigfoot being quote unquote empty vessels, or sort of, like somehow being sort of like flesh puppets that are being animated by a demon. And, that makes a whole lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
So, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, the idea is that the human soul, and I believe because we were given free will by God according to the Bible, is more difficult to possess. So these things that are sort of near human, these kind of cryptid creatures that are near human, are easier to possess. It's less of a fight for the demons to get a hold of them. So they will grab onto them, and so some of them are natural, but some of them are demonic or have demon souls in them, or demons are controlling them. It it just becomes one of these kind of Rube Goldberg devices that people often set up for the paranormal, where they just sort of, if this happened, then this could happen, and then this might happen. All of it based on what amounts to an idea. Like somebody had the idea, like, oh yeah. Yeah, so humans are more difficult to possess, so they'll possess Bigfoot. So it's a way to have your cake and eat it too. Yes, they're natural creatures, but they're also possessed by demons. I don't put too much into that.
I mean, if that's the case, all our like pets should be like going psycho and attacking us. Like they could possess so many other things besides Bigfoot. Like they could show up in so many other ways besides humans. I mean, they could get an army to attack us and like take over our souls.
Yeah. I mean, why aren't we doing battles with armies of possessed creatures, of cryptid and normal?
Possessed guinea pigs. I mean,
we're so cute, but then they go right for the throat.
Boom, just like Monty Pythons. And that
yes. When Josh and I were talking about smells for his book, I think it was Steph Young who had written about a case where it brought to mind the idea that the smell, that the sulfur smell that some of these things are giving off, is a decay. And that they may only exist for a short period of time. So when Bigfoot vanishes, it might be because it's no longer able to exist here.
That's really interesting. There are so many stories of things, supernatural things, getting shot and then rotting either immediately or very soon after. The Skinwalker Ranch, they shot that flesh off that wolf creature thing, and they came back, minutes later, and it was already rotten.
Yeah. There's
a story from Pennsylvania of what they called it, a spook stag, a ghost stag, that it was an albino, I think, that no one could kill, and then they said you had to forge a silver arrowhead to kill it. So someone did, and actually shot it, and it was this huge white stag. Supposedly they went back to get help to haul this thing out, and it had turned black and rotten to the point where even the antlers like crumbled in their hands.
Oh,
when
wow.
They tried to pick it up. Yeah, so there's been I can't think of specifically, but I know there's been Bigfoot reports too, where people have either shot flesh or shot them and talked about how it was already rotten.
Well, obviously we live in a video game, because that's exactly how creatures in video games
I was going to say that sounded like Tron or something. Like,
it's
like
kind of like the subplot of every vampire movie.
Yeah.
Weird.
Don't they also too, like the eye color is like some indication, like the ones with red glowing eyes are demon possessed, but the ones that don't.
Yeah, that's what they say. Yeah.
I don't think Tim puts a lot of stock in that.
Mm-hmm.
Just to guess from the laugh.
Yeah. It's just there's.
It's one of those things where it's like you have an unknown already. Like, why aren't you trying to shoehorn in some sort of other thing into it? Like, you don't even know what it is in the first place. Like, why would you start making other assumptions about it as if you knew everything about it?
Right, and that's what I advise religious people, especially, like, why do you want to tie your religion to this stuff? It's so slippery. It's so weird. It changes on a dime. Why would you want to, for a second, try to tie your religion to this stuff? Like,
it makes it easier to pull people in and control people.
Yeah, well, maybe.
You're being affected by this. I know what it is. It's a demon. And if you join up with my side, we'll be able to take care of you.
Well, there you go.
Some people just don't. I mean, like I said, it's like, the fast track in their brain. It's the easiest route. And when you're busy with life and you're doing all your stuff, it's like you go to what you're taught with. I mean, I do that sometimes on different things, but I'm sure we're all guilty of it at some point. But you go the fast point in your brain with what you've been taught with.
People also don't like the unknown.
Right,
but
it's scary. Let's say you're a deeply, that, and not no insult to Christians, but let's say you're a deeply fundamentalist Christian person who's also interested in Bigfoot or ghosts or whatever it happens to be.
That's a rare thing, but go ahead.
It's not as rare as you think. The Bigfoot community is very, very Christian. There are many, many, many Christian people in the Bigfoot community. And a lot of them are very, very forceful that it is a natural creature because if it's a demon, they can't deal with it. You know what I mean? Right. Like their religion literally says you can't deal with demons. But that's my wonder is that the people who are religious, who come to the conclusion that these things are demons, but still want to mess with this stuff. I'm kind of like, well, isn't that doesn't your religion say get away from that?
Yeah.
But no, the Christians in the Bigfoot community tend to fall in two camps. It's a demon and Jesus will save us from it, or no, it can't be a demon. It has to be an absolute natural animal because if there's anything weird about it, my religion says I can't mess with this stuff. And I like going out in the woods and hollering and wearing camo, getting drunk with my buddies.
Yeah, that's the one thing I hear a lot, especially on some shows, is that they put forth the idea that Bigfoot is a killing machine. It's a demon that you have to be constantly scared when you're out in the woods because a Bigfoot might kill you, and that sort of idea and mindset just seems to discourage people from trying to engage with this material at all in the first place. I don't understand. I feel like there's so many more scary things in the woods than a theoretical Bigfoot. It's odd that people put forth this sort of it has to be horrifying. They have to put forth this narrative that it's scary or demonic or
I think that's
monster.
That's the reason for the sudden popularity of Dogman, because it's like Bigfoot on steroids and more dangerous and more savage and more evil and I think if you add that element of spookiness and that extra danger and scariness, then it and then if you're going out in the woods you're extra brave.
Yeah, I mean, how people, you got to think about this from our perspective. Why we're obviously the scarier species,
yeah.
I mean, we're the ones who have weapons that can destroy the planet. I mean, we're the ones with guns and all.
And are highly irrational.
Yeah, highly irrational. If Bigfoot do exist and they're they are a physical creature and there are only 10,000 of them in the entire world, obviously we were the more dangerous, scary, fit species because there's billions of us and 10,000 of them. So I don't understand the fear aspect.
It's only because they haven't figured out that we can't see at night yet.
Yeah.
Once they figured that out, we're all dead.
So the thing I was going to mention earlier that completely slipped my mind is that if you want a really unique take on alien life, listen to the podcast Wolf 359. They actually just finished the show. I haven't listened to the last episode yet, but that's essentially what it is. Is this this space station orbiting Wolf 359 makes contact with aliens. It's also quite funny, but it's very deep and different in the way that these aliens communicate, and it's well worth checking out. Just it's A, because it's a really good podcast and it's really entertaining, but B, because the ideas they present are very unique.
I need to I'm going to subscribe to that right now because I've heard you mention that a couple times.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorites of all the fictional podcasts I've listened to.
The setup kind of reminds me a little bit. Are you familiar at all with Solaris?
No.
Okay, so it was a novel. I can't remember the author at the top of my head.
It was a Russian guy. I can't remember now.
Yeah, and it had a movie adaptation by Tarkovsky.
I think I saw the movie.
Yeah, there was the first movie adaptation by Tarkovsky, and there was a later one, I think in the 90s, that had George Clooney in it. But the idea is that this sort of star is an alien. Like it's like an intelligent planet / star, and it communicates with these people in the space station through their dreams and like using their memories to communicate with it and everything. It's very, I don't want to spoil anything because it's super cool if anyone wants to actually like read it and stuff, but that sounds very similar.
It's not. Let's go with that. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to give anything away because it unfolds very slowly. When I first started listening to it, it's very goofy for the first like 10 episodes. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder how far they planned it out. But then once they start going with it, you're kind of like, all right, where's this going? Oh, that's really interesting. I never would have seen that coming. And it's like, wait, what's happening? And now you could just binge the whole like 80 episodes or something, however many there are, because it's done,
Well, I'm subscribed now, so I'll definitely be enjoying that soon.
I just subscribed as well. Awesome.
So that was when I was looking for other fictional podcasts. That was one of the ones that came highly recommended, and I was like, all right, and it won me over immediately. But and again, though, it's talking about alien life and how we might communicate with it, and the difficulties there. And that goes, I think, for any of this stuff. So, I mean, when we look back on all this stuff, I think what we can say is that what we believe gives us power. It's not a matter of whether what we believe is right or wrong, because I don't think it really matters. It might matter to the individual, and that's fine. Anyone can believe whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anyone or forcing it on anyone else. It's fine.
Right. So. And the other thing I tell people is me telling you that your belief doesn't seem to matter in regards to this stuff is not the same thing as me telling you your religion is wrong.
Right.
Your religion may in fact be correct. I cannot make that assessment. The only thing I can tell you is in the instance of alien abductions, it doesn't seem to matter what religion you use. In the terms of alien abductions, they all seem to work equally in repelling the phenomenon. Yeah. It doesn't mean your religion's wrong. Doesn't mean any other religion is right. That's all that means.
Yeah, but some people get so entrenched in tribalism that they want to, believe that, okay, well, if any other religion is theoretically valid as well, it invalidates my own. Like there can only be one true religion and it has to be mine.
Well, there might still only be one true religion, but it might just be that any religion works in terms of this stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's hard to nail it down that way, but I think people they want to apply their own religion to these things, to everything,
What you're saying is that if an alien comes on and tries to attack me, my membership in the Church of the Subgenius, by declaring Bob Dobbs as my Lord and Savior, the alien should leave me alone.
Yeah, it should work fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Why does nobody ever just try to smoke out the alien?
I meet with a joint, or
yeah. I mean, like, why are we so scared? I mean, why don't you just be like, it could be like those shirts that people used to wear in the '90s, or this thing, like little posters, like, take me to your dealer.
Yeah.
You could have a good time with an alien.
Well, from whatever I've read about alien abductions, is like people are almost paralyzed or taken over, or they can't control their facilities or whatnot. I've never experienced alien abduction, so I don't know. But I mean, everything I've read or seen on it sounds pretty frightening. But I can't imagine it. But I mean, I don't know what it means. Does it really happen, or these people have a mental disorder? I have no idea.
That's what I thought was interesting when it was a recent show with Jeff Ritzman, and we were talking, and he said that he had actually once sort of gotten out of that control, or he'd like jumped up and actually grabbed one, and it sort of just fell apart like paper in his hands. Like
that's bizarre.
The sort of idea that that's what I try to tell people, because I want people to explore sort of out of body travel. I want people to explore that state, because I think it opens up a lot of the universe to you. But the problem is that, like you said, when you have those states, the things tend to creep in and try to scare you and keep you from doing it. And that was my biggest frustration watching that nightmare documentary about sleep paralysis. Was every one of these people were having like these sort of shadow person experiences, and they were terrified, and it was messing up their lives. And I wanted to just tell every one of these people, like, just tell it to screw off. Like you just like get up and tell it to leave, and it'll go away.
Well,
like
You know, I said that very
yeah.
thing to Ritzman though, and Ritzman
Mhm.
said no, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. It doesn't
Well-
respond like that. Because I told Ritzman, I'm like, well, you keep having these experiences. Don't you ever just get mad and tell it to leave you alone? He goes, no, it doesn't work that way.
Well,
Now that might be just
that
experience though.
But that might also be because Jeff's experience is a little bit deeper than the common like
Mhm.
one-off experience. You know, like experiencing sleep paralysis. Let's assume that that's putting us in an altered state. There's actually something there. It may not be independent of us, but it's something that we have to deal with.
Mhm.
In that case, telling it to go away might be a way of getting through that gateway.
Yeah.
But where Jeff is way beyond that gateway.
Yeah.
You know, so it does that. They don't care if he tells it to go away. He's you know, once you get to a certain point, there's no going back. I learned that very, very well. I mean,
Well-
you can't unlearn this stuff. You can't unadapt to this stuff. You can kind of block it out to a degree, but it's always there once you've passed a certain point.
I've only I've never had it to the severe experience, but I watched something on a documentary once. It was a Canadian documentary, and this young girl had a lot of eating disorder problems and severe mental health, and then she had a baby. She was living in really poor conditions, and she constantly had sleep paralysis, and she was telling, relating this sleep paralysis to this documentary, and then the film crew in the documentary actually recommended to her to do this sort of shamanistic ritual, and she had been suffering for years with no sleep. It was really progressive. It was really extreme. And then they did an update, and they had actually done the shamanistic ritual, and the night before they did the shamanistic ritual,
Mhm.
she had the worst sleep paralysis in ever. It was really extreme, and we're not talking sleep paralysis that just she experiences. We're talking sleep paralysis that other people who stayed the night at her house experienced
And that's
as
interesting.
well. Yes. And then it was almost like it acted up like crazy because it knew it was being threatened.
Mhm.
And the next interview they had with her, this could all be dramatization for all I know.
Mhm.
But from what I understand is they went through this shamanistic experience, and because she believed something in it, it actually alleviated it. Whether or not that sleep paralysis was linked to all her anorexia and disorders, I don't know. But whatever they did really seemed to help her.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised in the least.
Yeah. But it was interesting to see the night before that she knew that this was going to happen, this ritual, that it all hell broke loose for her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in Jeff's case, and this isn't meant as sort of a moral judgment on Jeff or anything, but I know that he was going through like the lady you were talking about, Melissa. He was going through a lot of depression and anxiety and stress because of his experiences. Things were happening to his son, or at least he believed things were happening to his son. So part of me wonders if why sort of that force of will wouldn't work was because he was in a mental state where he still had doubts about his own ability to resist the phenomena. He wasn't fully confident in his ability to actually do it. And with that girl too, I mean, I do believe these are external entities and that they sort of feed on this this fear and doubt and anxiety that people produce when they're in when they're having these experiences. So part of me thinks if she'd been having this for so long, maybe the reason it was so strong in its little final fight was that it had been basically drinking on her for 20 years.
Parasite.
Yeah.
It had been feeding off her so long. It was so bloated and powerful by that point that it could affect other people around. That's very fascinating.
And it had affected people all along, but on the last night, it went really intense. It was almost like it knew, maybe if I can scare the shit, I'll just scare her really bad and she won't go through with it, or I'll exhaust her and she won't be able to do it because this is my lifeline.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've written about this in my blog too, but that sort of shadow person or sort of guardian sort of encounter is very similar to what you see in the occult when people talk about sort of the dweller on the threshold, like this sort of guardian or force that stands between you and full self-actualization, and being able to tell it to go away, being able to move past it sort of opens you up and it allows you to move forward. I mean, I feel like I went through that a long time ago, and so far I haven't run into anything in my travels that I couldn't tangle with. But I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll meet something that I'm not ready to deal with at some point. But so far, just having confidence in yourself is really all you need.
Yeah. And I think this young girl in this example was probably far from having that confidence.
Yeah. I mean, It's stressful when you're going through that kind of thing and you don't understand what's going on. Because I went through it for years and I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was being abducted by aliens or there were ghosts in my house. Like I had no idea what was going on. And you don't get sleep. Like all of her problems, like anorexia and stuff, could just be after effects of her just being stressed out and not getting enough sleep and being constantly terrified every time she has to go to bed. I mean, that kind of stress will cause people to have, mental problems like anorexia.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty severe. And the other thing is too that I've noticed is that if you do have something like anorexia or some kind of mental disability, it's almost like you weaken your boundaries, and things like that can sort of prop in a lot more easier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like it's easier for you to be susceptible to negative things if you are suffering from some kind of illness or something like anorexia or something like a personality disorder, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, Lon Milo DuQuette talks about them a little bit in his book Low Magic, where he talks a little bit about that, about experiences in astral travel. And he sort of refers to them, I think he calls them like nasties or something, but that they're sort of just like larvae. They're sort of just maggots that float around in sort of the imaginal and look for people that they can latch onto or look for people who are scared. Like it kind of all ties back to sort of ideas about like loosh and sort of energy that's given off when people are in states of like panic and terror.
Yeah.
And that maybe some entities or spirits sort of use that as sustenance. I mean, that's making a lot of assumptions there, so this is just speculation on my part. But exactly. I mean, it fits with a narrative that I've seen through both UFO literature and out-of-body literature. And I just want people to remember that when they're in that state, it can be scary. I mean, I'd be lying if I said that, when you see something like that it doesn't sort of give you pause, that it doesn't like send a little chill up your spine, but you have to face it with, a sense of will and confidence and exert your influence over it, because you're a human, you have a human soul. These things are not equal to you.
That was my experience. I just was with all confidence said, you have not been invited here. Out. You go. So I think that's a good attitude to take in life sometimes.
Yeah, so many people go through their lives without any sense of like self-worth or any sense of confidence in their, even in their day-to-day lives, much less in their dreams. So that's something that you can apply to your life as well as sort of your your liminal experiences.
Okay. One of the things I was going to mention earlier, not to shift the subject drastically, but when we were talking about religion, Crowley had said at one point that religion is a mountain named by different people, different things with different trails to the top, but it's still the same mountain. And I think that's really kind of on key to what religion is. Like it all, like in its base form, it all has the same goal to take you, to God. And it's like people don't realize that they're climbing the same mountain. They're busy fighting over which way to the top is the right way to the top,
Or they get stuck halfway up the mountain because they believe it's the top. That's why they say if you meet Buddha on the road, you should kill him. Like it. And, other experiments that were done by Crowley and other people, he said that the spirits lie all the way to the top. Every one of them will tell you that it's God. It's the highest, and if you get stuck there, you think you're at the top of the mountain, but you haven't even started climbing yet.
They are all liars.
Yeah, they're all liars in Aaron David's voice. Yep.
But the thing is, like, even with the whole UFO thing, it seems like they tell you enough truth to lead you on.
Yeah. There's often, and I think that's part of it. I think to keep you in a state of unsurety. I would say not necessarily confusion, but where you're always unsure.
Yeah. In my experiences, I can't think of any points where I've ever been lied to. And I don't know if that's because I'm never sure. Like if I always just kind of keep things on that unsure sort of level to begin with, so it's kind of like it doesn't do that, or it's just really setting me up in a long game.
I mean, I have a question. Like, it's interesting that you say that ascendance, that it's sort of all lying to you. Like, I have this concept of the higher self, sort of a higher wisdom that's always like, is that is that a voice that's sort of tricking you, or I always had that concept that you had this higher wisdom, this higher self that's guiding you along the ways. And when I hear that, I'm like, oh, is that higher voice? Should you transcend that? Is that like trickery? Because I know I hear a lot of people talk about their higher self and sort of direction, and that's a belief as well. I don't know if it's really there, or is it their own mind tricking them, or is that another trickery, or are they supposed to transcend that? That'd be interesting to hear people's opinion on a concept of a higher self.
That's a tough one, because some of the stuff might be the higher self manifesting.
Yeah.
But I think it's also meant to be challenging. I mean, if this stuff was easy, it wouldn't have any real true meaning to it. I mean, I think that's why some of this stuff is scary, because it's building you up. I mean, my experience is like when someone says to me, well, what's the scariest thing that happened to you? It's hard for me. Or like, what's the worst thing that happened to you? And I always think, well, that was bad. But then again, this is what I learned from it. And that was really good. So can I really say the experience itself was a bad experience if something so good came out of it? Letting that shadow in and actually feeling it sort of manipulate me a little. I can say, I could be like, oh, that was scary and bad, but it wasn't, because I just basically kicked it back out and went, okay, I know where my morals lie. Thank you. But,
like I've always had this sort of like my higher self directing me somewhere. And then I thought, well, that was like horrible. But then as it goes through, I'm like, well, it was horrible, but I'm like either I'm a way better person, or the dynamic between me and that person that I thought was horrible actually made us stronger together, or something. It's like I was judging it from a completely wrong point of view, and the higher self was like, yeah, you haven't got a clue. I know. Or you know what I mean?
and there are some people who don't learn from those experiences. And this applies to just everyday life, because I think the higher self is always there for everyone. It's, it may be more obvious to those working in magical fields, but I think the stuff, reality works the same way for everyone. It's just that some people don't pay attention to the lessons it's trying to teach you. And for whatever reason, you need to learn these things. And some people think that we plan those things out prior to existing here.
Yeah.
Which is,
what if your higher self is a nut job?
It's like, I'm going to take you on a ride, lady.
Ro, what are you saying about your higher self?
Well, this stuff, oh boy. This stuff is kind of out of my league, because I am a person who fiercely fights any kind of dead set belief system. I try to be the guy that doesn't believe anything. It tries to be as agnostic as I possibly can about everything.
That's not bad. And
I find that when I do that, it opens a lot more windows. It's a lot easier to stand outside of a lot of things and look in at things. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I also try not to be judgmental, but I am human. I do make judgments. I do try to push those things away, but of course I still do. Like, I'm not a Bigfoot guy at all. Bigfoot doesn't hold a whole hell of a lot of interest to me one way or another. But if people are into Bigfoot and they're having experiences or whatever, who am I to say otherwise? But I fiercely, it's like saying, okay, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat or whatever, because once you make that announcement, and once you align yourself with any one certain thing, then by default you fall into the beliefs, the mindsets, the structure of all of the things that fall behind that. So and I just don't like being in any one place at any one thing. I try very, very hard to try to see everything, because I really don't personally believe we're ever going to find anything to any of this stuff, because people have been looking at this stuff for how many thousands of years, and none of us are really any closer to anything. So when I got into this stuff, I knew from the beginning, I'm not going to learn the answers to any of this kind of stuff. I'm just here for my own education, or for fun, or for whatever reason I'm here. But I don't expect to find out what aliens are tomorrow, or if ghosts are real, or any of that kind of stuff. And this is coming from a person who has had experiences, many. And even the experiences that I've had, I've gained no insight, no knowledge, no nothing out of any of them. Maybe because I'm not trying, or maybe because I don't want to, or whatever. I just haven't seen anything out of them that has, I've really gained anything. Cool, unique, sometimes scary, but whatever. That's why I say, what if your higher self is kind of nuts? Because there's been a lot of times where I've had that presence of higher self, and it's kind of like, I don't think that's the right decision, so I don't think I'm going to listen to you. And many times I've made the right decision by not listening to that little voice, or whatever the hell you want to call it.
but here's the thing that you can never know. That voice may have been taking you somewhere else entirely. Sometimes you need to make the wrong decision to get to the right place.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm totally really good at doing that.
yeah. Here's the thing with me. Synchronicity is my big thing in my life. Everybody's like, some people they're prone to ghosts. Some people have UFO experiences. Some people, I don't know, they talk to tomatoes or whatever. I don't know. My big thing is synchronicities, where I will have situations where synchronicities far-flung, very obvious. This is definitely one of those synchronicity kind of moments that if I'm experiencing it or whatever, where I'll choose, I don't want to deal with this right now. I'll just keep on going. And the things will keep happening in a certain way, in a certain situation, until I have to make a decision, until I come to the crossroad where I finally make a decision. I have to turn this way or that way on this crossroad. I can't just keep going past it.
Mm-hmm.
Many situations that I couldn't possibly go into all of them right now. And for the longest time, for a long time, it used to bother me really, really bad, because it felt like I had no free will. It was like life is on this path, and you're going to have to choose these. You can't choose otherwise. You're on this path no matter how you want to deny it. Now that I've reached a point in my life, I'm just going, okay, yeah, I this is happening again. Okay, I'll just try to feel my way through it and continue on. I don't understand the rhyme or the reason behind it. I don't know if it's a religious thing, a spiritual thing. I don't know if there's a higher power trying to guide me or whatsoever, because none of it really makes any sense. But I've just come to a point in my life where I accept that strange things happen, and something or some way or another is trying to guide me in different directions. And that's just how it is. There's nothing I can do about it. And hell be damned if I try to figure out what the hell it is.
Well, maybe like a video game, they haven't designed the parts that you're trying to go into, and someone's going, no, that part's not finished. Go this way.
Well, they need to do a patch update then, because
Damn it, Roejen, why don't you listen?
Yeah, in terms
I
of
guess.
in terms of being like understanding whether or not what you're talking to is really your higher self. I mean, I think Seriah put forth an interesting point there that you can't really know. And I mean, I'm someone who doesn't necessarily believe kind of in a higher self. I've never experienced it. I mean, maybe I will one day, and I'll change my tune on that.
How do you know you haven't experienced it?
I don't. That's an important point.
Can be really subtle.
I think you have to approach it from a perspective of like risk management. You have to make some sort of analysis of whatever you're getting, in terms of instructions or advice or whatever, and thinking about it logically and saying, what happens if this goes wrong? Like, what happens if I listen? Like, what could possibly happen?
Yeah.
And maybe, so like we've talked about before, maybe some of these things are structured in such a Rube Goldberg-esque fashion that there's no way that you can possibly follow the chain of events to the conclusion. But I think it is, I don't think there's anything wrong with just questioning everything that you meet. There's no reason it can't lie to you. And there's no reason that what it says it is what it really is. And there's no reason for you to believe it. I think you should question everything.
Kind of like having a plan A, plan B, sort of backup, like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Take it all with a grain of salt.
Yeah. I mean, like Crowley said, they'll lie to you all the way to the top.
Yeah, I think questioning is, and this is something I took with me from chaos magic that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. There was and I forget which publication it was, but it was talking about groups of chaos magicians and what a sort of oxymoron that could be. And they assigned one person. They said, if you're going to do this, one person must be assigned to question every decision made. So it's like, no matter what it is, this person questions it. And I have taken that with me everywhere I go ever since, because that is so healthy. It's such a healthy thing. And if people, I find in my life, if people start getting nervous or angry that you're asking questions, then you need to ask more questions, because
Yes.
that's a certain sign that something's funny is going on. And
Yes.
I always say, like, if it's the truth is the truth, and the answer is going to be the same every time. And not to get into conspiracy stuff, but just, throw out 9/11. The people who get angry at you for even asking questions about it, to me, that's like, well, wait a minute. Like, if there's an answer and there's a simple answer, it should be the same answer every time. And it shouldn't matter how many times I ask the question. A tree is a tree. Yeah. If you ask me 50 times if that's a tree, the answer is it's a tree.
Isn't that the definition of insanity, though? Asking the same, or doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get a different result? Is that what it was? Something like that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but people who get, what I'm saying is, I take it as an indicator. People who get upset that you would ask a question, to me is immediately now more questions need to be asked.
Red flag. Yeah.
Isn't that the definition of insanity, though? Asking the same question a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things that you can take away from that too. On one hand, it is very good. Like, I trade cryptocurrencies, and one thing before I enter into any trade is I think about what could go wrong, what could go right, what should I set my stop limits at, like, where do I expect this to go? You always set up backup plans. You always have plan Bs. And sometimes plan Cs and plan Ds, depending on how risky something is.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you're too careful and you ask too many questions, you can fall into the trap of indecisiveness, where you never get off the starting line, because you're constantly trying to come up with every possible thing that could go wrong. I mean, sometimes you have to just do things with confidence, but also with a sense of risk management.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely.
So it's like understanding this really good balance between the two.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Dichotomies. Yeah.
And I think it comes down to, like Wren saying, to sort of have the confidence to trust in yourself, to know, and a lot of creative people have this, where you just, when the painting's done, or when the song's finished.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Other people don't. I've worked with people who would never, nothing could ever be finished because it was never good enough. Yeah. And at some point you just have to go, no, it's done. Like, this is done. This is finished. Yeah.
Yes.
Even if it's not perfect, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's never going to be perfect. Never. I've never done anything in my life. All the albums I've done, I can look back and say, I wish I would have done that different or that different. Mm-hmm. Every drawing I've ever done, I wish I could change that little part of it. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but at some point it has to be done.
Yeah, you just take that on with you to the next project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When we shot Gateways to Magonia, particularly the Men in Black scene, I was just like, oh man, the lighting in this is terrible. Like, I really hate it. And a number of people have said, I really like that scene. And I'm thinking, good. Hate the lighting. And it's like, I almost wanted to reshoot it, but it was so hard to get those. I wanted those specific people because I knew they would do it well. And getting them together was really, really difficult. And I'm thinking, do I want to wait, who knows how much longer to reshoot this scene? Or do I just want to put it together and just say, the hell with it? Most people aren't going to notice the lighting,
Yeah. You have to find that balance between being decisive and making decisions and sticking with your plan, and actually having a plan to begin with. Usually people are on one end or the other. Either they never do anything and they're constantly trying to think up different ways to do it, but they never actually make the move, or people just do things impulsively without any plan. And neither one of those sides of the coin really work that well. You kind of have to find a balance of those two.
Have a structure and then go with the flow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are also the people who will make excuses for not getting things done, and I think part of that is an ego sort of thing. Like, they don't want to fail. So they'll always put it off. Like, well, I could do this, but I need this first. And then they get that and they go, yeah, that's great. But now I need this.
Yeah.
And it's never quite good enough, and they never make that step forward because they're afraid of putting things out there and having someone be like, well, that sucks.
Yeah,
Because they can't handle it. And that's a normal instinct. I mean, we all take, we can get like 50 great comments on a show, and then I'll get one bad one and be like, oh,
yep,
that one bad. And I've learned to shrug that off, like where I just read it, kind of laugh and move on.
Yes.
If it was 50 bad comments, that would be different.
Yeah.
But when it's just that one, it's like, yeah, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like it or thinks it's not good or whatever. And you got to learn to just kind of, okay, whatever, that's fine.
Imagine how Ryan Johnson feels about The Last Jedi. I mean, like at some point you have to realize that people complain, but they probably couldn't pull it off themselves, Seriah.
Oh, sure. And the bigger something gets, like The Last Jedi, the more criticism it's going to be open to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If that was a small, I still haven't seen it, so but
go.
I plan on it after New Year's at some point. But like if it was a small indie film, it would probably be lavished with praise. But because it's Star Wars, it's automatically open to a ton of criticism.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think too, people have a basic misunderstanding that experience is a better teacher than any book or course or anything that you'll ever encounter. Like I could have spent all this year researching, trading strategies and reading books about cryptocurrency and doing, studying, watching YouTube videos. But then I wouldn't have caught all the opportunities I've caught. And I also wouldn't have made all the mistakes that I made. But those mistakes were valuable in their own sense because it taught me what not to do. And it taught me what not to do in a way that no book or course or, YouTube video could have ever prepared me for.
Yeah. And I always feel like going into any situation, you need to assess it. You got to figure out, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen and what's the best thing that can happen, and kind of prepare for that. Okay, so the worst might happen, but let's assume that's not going to be the case. And how can we work with what's left? And a lot of people in today's culture, for some reason, and I think it's part of the whole depression thing, is that they see that horrible outlook and they just fixate on it.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? That, oh my God, what if that actually happens? And that's it. They're done.
Yeah. I mean, the next step too, though, is actually sticking to your plan, to your exit strategy. That's something that a lot of people trip up on. Like to give a cryptocurrency example, you'll buy something and it'll start going down. And you've said, okay, if this goes down 20% from my initial position, I'm going to sell and cut my losses, right? But it'll keep creeping down, and then you'll start telling yourself, well, maybe I'll just turn that down to 25%. Like I really think it's going to go back up, and you'll keep doing that all the way to the bottom. Like you've got to stick to your plan once you have it. It's not enough just to have a plan. You've also got to stick to it.
So cryptocurrency, that's what like Bigfoot uses to pay his debts.
Yes. Yeah.
I was waiting for somebody to make that joke.
I wanted to understand that because that's about as deep as my understanding goes.
It's part of my habituation strategy. I'm going to take my cryptocurrency out of the woods. I'm going to leave it on a tree stump so Bigfoot can go get some hamburgers.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
You're so thoughtful.
Yeah, I'm going to put like a giant anvil like over the McDonald's drive-thru, and I'm going to drop it on its head.
This sounds like a Looney Tunes sort of cartoon now.
Yeah. It's either that or like I'm going to like paint like a fake wall in a tunnel and like try to get it to run into it or something like that. Yeah.
Or dress up like a lady Bigfoot.
Ooh, that's
this escalated quickly.
Yeah. That's excellent. That's a really good idea.
I was thinking, if we're doing Looney Tunes, that's what it always worked for Bugs.
Yeah.
Just Bigfoot walking out, a big piano falls in its head, and all of its teeth get replaced by the black and white keys.
There you go.
And when it comes to Bigfoot, the whole habituator thing always bugs me because you have these people being like, "Oh yeah, no, we deal with them regularly." It's like they take a damn picture, and then really, they do, and it looks like the most fake thing in the world, and you're going, "Okay, so either you're crazy or lying,"
Yeah, but then there's this whole weird thing. I'm not sure anyone can get a good picture. I mean, I think that's part of the phenomenon.
Well, if it's an actual flesh and blood animal, then you should be able to get a good picture.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing. I don't.
Well, guys, what if you've got like an infrared camera and like a really cool setup, and you're watching the tree like log with the apples on it, but then a Bigfoot makes a really scary noise behind you, and you turn away at just the wrong moment. Like, I hate it when that happens.
Yeah.
We got to save it for the. What's the documentary called? I just wanted the Todd Standing show. What is it?
It's Discovering Bigfoot. It's a laugh a minute. Y'all love it.
We got the Discovering Bigfoot show.
I'm also not convinced that the Patterson film is fake.
I don't know what I think about the Patterson film. I really don't.
The Patterson film, despite people coming out and being like, "Oh, I was the guy in the monster suit."
Yeah.
There are things about that you can't replicate very easily.
I am
especially with the tech of the day. I mean, now,
right.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
now,
back then, the Patterson film showing something odd.
Yeah.
Have multiple people come out and saying they were the Bigfoot, or just one person?
One guy, and his proportions don't seem well. It depends who you ask. According to some skeptics will draw drawings and they'll say his proportions match up with the creature exactly. But other people say whatever was in that suit, they can't. The human proportions don't match.
And the gait of the walk can't be manipulated. They've tried to duplicate the way that it walked and the gait of its walk and how it walked, the stride of its steps.
It's a compliant bent knee gait that's very, very unusual. And it would need arm extensions, which was kind of unheard of in costumes at the time.
Right.
But not hard to do. I mean, it's not hard to do that. And people need to remember that there is a thing called forced perspective in filmmaking.
Yes.
Like in a 2D image, you can make things look bigger than they would seem to be. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to be too skeptical about it because I do kind of I believe Bob Gimlin wasn't in on it if it was a hoax. I think Bob believes he saw what he saw, and it may be a real thing, but I'm cautiously optimistic about it, I guess.
But when you think about it, Planet of the Apes came out around the same time, and look at the apes in there.
Yeah.
They don't even resent you. They look like people in costumes.
Yes.
This thing does not look like a person in a costume. I mean, this extensive work has been done, like Roejen was saying with the gait. Mm-hmm. They've had someone replicate the date, and humans can't walk like that.
Well, even the bend of the back and the slump of the shoulders and where the head is proportionately sitting on the creature. I think the guys from Mythbusters even tried to duplicate it, and I don't think they were completely able to.
Yeah, people have tried with modern technology. I think the BBC put a lot of money into trying to duplicate it, and it would look ridiculous. Their attempt to reproduce the Patterson film looked absolutely ridiculous. It looks, you immediately saw a guy in a suit, silly, and
that's one of the video. Even though I'm not a Bigfoot guy, that one still hold my fascination all these years.
Yeah.
So is it possible? I mean, they were out there looking for Bigfoot, and they actually found him and got a video of it.
Right.
Is it possible that if this thing is imaginal, as Wren said, and if you want a good workup of the whole imaginal realm, pick up Tim, help me.
Demonic Reality.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go. By Patrick Harper. Oh, we still have to get back on.
Fantastic.
But anyway,
fantastic, life-changing book.
I'm reading that book right now. Actually, I was reading it earlier.
What if they essentially created Bigfoot? They made him manifest because they were looking for him. And it just was the right circumstances where he was formed enough that they could get an image of him before he eventually deteriorated and disappeared.
Yeah, and well, my thing is too, like, it seems to be something with this phenomenon where, okay, we're going to give you an image, and you'll have an image that'll be on this old Super 8 film, and people will argue about it forever. There'll be people, skeptics, both on both sides. Professionally trained people and just the common everyday folks who on both sides who would say that it definitely shows something, and then on the other side, no, this is this is a fake, this guy in a suit, whatever. That, and it's clear, but it's not clear. It's
yeah,
it's not perfect. I mean, I just, as time goes on, I think that's part of it. I think it's like, okay,
it's the nature of the phenomena.
Yeah,
it's what it does.
We're going to give you something, but it's going to be surrounded by question marks.
If it was too perfect, though, it would immediately be dismissed as a fake.
Especially nowadays. Well, that
Oh, yeah.
and I've said that with the CGI and the like nowadays. There's nothing will ever be good enough as far as film.
No. And, and look at UFOs. There's been plenty of really good UFO footage where we could say, we don't know what that is. That's behaving in a way, when they released this with the New York Times article, which they're now, apparently backpedaling on a little bit, but,
Surprise.
Yeah, you had to know that was coming.
Yeah.
Shoot a drop.
I want to see it from a better source than the Sun, though. I mean, they did state it was coming out of the Washington Post or something they were quoting.
I don't know. I have to pull the article up.
Okay. Well, anyway, them revealing that footage is like, okay, but we've seen stuff better than this before that is not explainable.
Right.
None of it proves an extraterrestrial craft. None of it proves what it is. It's very hard with video unless it's a known thing. If you're saying some weird creature is coming into my yard at night, and you get a picture of something that you can't identify that doesn't look like anything else, well, you still don't know what it is just because you got a picture of it. But if it turns out to be, a wildcat, you're going, oh, it's a wildcat or a bear or whatever. You have to know what the thing you're looking for is. Otherwise, the picture doesn't, all the picture can do is eliminate the known things.
Have any of you heard the 911 call where the guy is on the phone with the police and he's trying to say that he never says it's a Bigfoot?
Oh,
He
yeah.
says there's something big in my yard, and then he stops. He goes, "It's in the window. It's looking at me right now." And she goes, "What is it?" He's like, "It's a big man." He stops.
There's a call that precedes that. The same guy before that you don't often hear, where something kills his German Shepherd dog and throws it over the fence into his yard.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Same guy, and then he calls back a couple of days later. That if anybody wants that call, it's actually on the Stone Breath Cryptid CD as a bonus. You have to buy the CD itself. It's got a bunch of
very good, yeah.
bunch of Bigfoot 911 calls at the end of that. But
And that CD's available where? Where was that? Did you say? Anyway,
stonebreath.bandcamp.com.
Okay, all right.
But that's really interesting. That's the best, I think, 911 call by far. I did a bunch of searches on them, trying to pack as many as I could.
Because that guy, he genuinely sounds scared as hell in his voice.
Oh, yeah.
Like he but he never calls it a Bigfoot. You can hear him. He wants to say it's Bigfoot, but he doesn't want to because he doesn't want to get laughed at.
Yeah.
But he's like, it's a big dark man. I don't want to say it's a Bigfoot, so it's not a Bigfoot, but
he says, I don't know.
It's a Bigfoot.
It's big. I don't know. Something like that. Yeah, it's you can hear the fear in his voice.
That I have not heard yet. But I mean, that's not surprising because if you're calling the police, you don't want to tell them there's a Bigfoot in your yard.
Right.
No.
You're probably not going to get a response.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
but
I had a guy
if you say
down my door and I didn't get a response, so I think that's just that's how it works.
Why was there? Do I want to ask why there was a guy trying to break down your door?
Hey man, it's living in Atlanta can be weird. Okay.
Okay. All right.
They're coming after his cryptid currency.
Yeah, they were coming after my my Flatwood Monster coin.
I have my doubts about cryptocurrency because I've never seen a picture of a cryptid currency yet. So I'm not saying it's not real, but
they're really blurry. You have
I
to,
have several. They're very, very blurry. They're
just saying. I don't know.
You can make out that it's currency, but
There are non-blurry pictures of UFOs. I've mentioned it a few times in recent shows talking about the New York Times article, but there was a fantastic one shot by a police helicopter, I think in Florida somewhere. They had aired it on UFO Hunters when it was on Sci-Fi. At the end of one of their episodes, it's just kind of an aside. It was just kind of like, oh, look at this. We don't know what this is. And they were picking it up on the infrared, and it was a very clear image of this object following the helicopter. And when they turned off the infrared, there was nothing there. And so the cops are kind of freaking out a little bit about it, going, "What is that thing?" And they're telling them, change direction. And they're changing direction. The thing continues following them, and they're flipping back between the infrared and the non-infrared, and the thing's only showing up on the infrared. Now, this is not new. People have gotten infrared photos of UFOs that aren't visible to the naked eye for forever. For as long as we've had that technology. One of I think it was Andrew Collins' second book was called Alien Energy. And the whole first part of the book is how you could pick up things on the infrared that seem to definitively be there. They're not like emulsion issues or anything like that, but they're not visible to the naked eye. And of course you have ghost hunters kind of going in the same range now, where they're aiming to, use infrared technology to try and pick up ghosts and stuff. So this is, there are pictures out there, there are convincing ghost videos.
Yeah, but
there are great EVPs. The problem is none of it tells us what those things are.
And the other thing is, at this point, so much of that stuff is easily faked and hoaxed.
Sure.
But the flip side of it is, well, if there's UFOs out there, how come people don't have pictures? Go outside in the daytime, take your cell phone camera, and try to take a picture of an airplane up in the sky and look at what comes on your phone. Like when I saw what I saw, I tried taking a picture of it, and I had no problem seeing it with my naked eye. But when I looked at my phone, it was a little white dot. And or just try to get a picture of the moon with a phone. The average person with a cell phone trying to get a picture of a moon, or the moon, I should say. It's not. These things don't work the way people would think they do. And the other problem is technology is so readily available and so cheap now that anything can be faked very easily. And it's getting harder and harder and harder at this point to recognize what is faked and what isn't faked. Before, you could be able to go through and find filters and you could find that stuff. But with every progressive release of Photoshop or whatever the new video editing software is, those lines are becoming such blurred at this point.
Yes.
That at this, I don't think anybody's going to be able to believe anything until something lands on the White House lawn. And even then, you're going to have the people that are like, well, this is obviously, an inside
disinfo,
job. Yeah, disinfo.
Yeah.
Or this is technology the government already possesses, and this is trying to draw us away from the election or whatever.
It looks like we're making takeover real easy for them. We're all going to be so confused.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my favorite experiments that I've ever heard done in terms of Bigfoot was the Olympic project in Washington. They had a bunch of people come and they had various cameras. Some of them had SLR cameras, digital cameras, their phones, every sort of camera. And they put a guy out in the woods in a Bigfoot costume, a goofy, like Halloween store Bigfoot costume. It was orange, like orangutan orange kind of thing. And they told them he's out there. He's out there, take a walk and take pictures of him. Well, the guy said two things. He said, first of all, if he stood still, he could be 2 feet off the trail and they'd walk right by him, even in this goofy orange costume, and never see him. So all he had to do was stay still. But then they started telling the people, okay, like he's coming, like he's up around the bend, and he would walk across the trail in front of him. No one got a good picture all day long. They knew he was going to be there. They were trying to take pictures of him. No one got a good picture. He wasn't running as fast as he could. He would, walk at a normal pace. Mm-hmm, they said the woman who got the best picture was taking a picture like through a rock formation that she just thought the rock formation was interesting. She was taking a picture. She caught him by accident. She didn't even know he was there till they looked at the pictures. So it's really, really hard. Everybody says, why don't people just take clear pictures? It's a lot harder than you think to grab your, phone or camera or anything and get it steady and take a picture. Patterson had trained. A lot of people don't know this. He had trained a long time in jumping off the horse, grabbing the camera, getting it on. He had done this activity. He had trained to do this before he went out there in the woods. So it was a very smooth, muscle memory for him to hop off the horse and get the camera going as fast as he did. In normal cases, that thing that I saw on Toad Road that I talked about on one of your members things, Seriah, I didn't for a second think to raise my phone and take a picture. I was I was just like, what is that? And then I wanted to see it as best as I could. It didn't occur to me to, grab a camera. It just doesn't, when you're in the moment with these things.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're grabbing your camera, you're not really actually looking at it.
Yeah.
There's a thing that I frequently talk about, and it's the moment of disconnect, where your brain looks at something, you go, "Oh, that is a such and such that shouldn't exist. I'm seeing something that shouldn't be there." Well, what is it? Is it this? Is it that? And you're not thinking, I need to grab my camera. The only time you're thinking I need to grab my camera is if you're at a Coney Island at 4:00 in the morning and 3 people are getting into a fight. Then you grab your camera and you're putting it up on, World Star Hip Hop or something.
World Star.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're seeing a UFO or a Bigfoot, it's something that's so out of place. Like when I saw my thing, I was like, all right, I'm seeing something. I've studied so much stuff. I know what to do here. I'm like, that's a plane, that's a blimp, that's blah, 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 blah. And then I did eventually get to a point where I tried to take a picture and I was like, well, that didn't show anything good. So it was frustration. But even the taking a picture was the last on my list of stuff to do. It's like, stick my thumb out. How far away? How big is it from my thumb? How cold is it out? What temperature is this right now? And the whole time I'm like, what is that? What is that? Every third question, what the hell is that? But your brain's trying to process so much so fast at such a rate. I mean, nobody expects to see something out of the ordinary. It's not, if you go to a Coney Island and people get into a fight, okay, well, you've seen people fight before. It's funny. Yeah, I'll get my camera out and film that. If you see a UFO or a Bigfoot or a giant flaming carrot running down the road drinking a Pepsi, you don't stop to think maybe I should grab my camera and take a picture of that, because you're going, what the hell is that?
Right.
And then by the time it's all done and over with, the thought of, oh, maybe I should get a picture occurs to you. And then it's usually not that easy.
Yeah, well, that's the point of that study. Those people were prepared. They were told there's a guy in a Bigfoot costume. Take pictures of him, and they still couldn't get a clear picture all day.
Yeah.
When I saw my UFO, I had a video camera in the back seat. Now, granted, it was a clunky VHS-C video camera. It would have taken me a good 30 seconds to pull it out and actually get it going, and by then the thing would have been gone. But I was more focused on trying to examine exactly what I was seeing, observe my surroundings, look around me, I'm like trying to process, okay, could that be a helicopter? No. It's definitely not a plane. It's hovering. What else could it be? How big is it? Oh, it's starting to go down. Okay, it's between all those trees. That's freaking huge. Okay.
Because your brain's disconnected from what's going on, trying to figure out what the hell is happening.
Well, not only that, but I went into analytic mode.
Yep.
I was, and like the lights were incredibly bright, and I'm going, okay, it looks like an object. Am I actually seeing an object, or are the lights being in stationary position giving me the illusion of an object? And I went, finally, okay, I can't tell if I'm seeing an actual object. I can't say for certain there's an object there other than the lights. And by the time it went down, I went, and I had a video camera in the back seat.
That's same,
but
same thing with me. I'm looking at the thing and I'm going, that's a deer. No, that's not a deer. It can't be a deer. That's way too big for a deer. And it's a moose. What is a moose doing in York County, Pennsylvania? Wait a minute. No, that's not. It can't. So I'm going through this whole series of things, like trying to figure out like what it could be. I think your mind, you sort of go to the natural things first, and then you sort of eliminate them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, to be honest, I can barely take a proper picture of a full moon, let alone whip my cell phone camera out and catch something that's running around that I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. I mean, and you've got to get your phone out, turn it on. It can be really difficult. I mean, to get a picture of something you know what it is, let alone something you're completely baffled about.
Were I to see something again, I doubt I wouldn't bother and try to take a picture of it. What good is it going to do?
Just experience it.
Yep. I'm right there. I want to observe it the best I can, and I want to experience it. And maybe if I'm there for 5 minutes or more and it's still happening, I'll try to get a picture. But
yeah, but even then, that's going to be for your own personal good. You're not going to go around telling people, "Hey, look at the picture of this UFO I got."
Right.
Because it's just not worth trying to fight that battle.
Yep.
I also think that we missed the fact that Roejen implied there's more than one moon we could take a picture of.
Yeah.
What does Roejen know that we don't?
Well, you have the flat moon, the flat Earth moon. You have the hollow moon.
Yeah,
you have the 3D
spacecraft
projection
moon.
There's the red moon. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
There are no phases of the moon. Those are all different moons that look the same.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Correct.
You know, why don't we invest and get some of these people who see Sasquatches like all the time and get them like GoPro cameras to put on their heads? You know, because I see like GoPro videos like people doing like, you know, mountain biking or, you know, like hiking or whatever. Like it just like, why worry about having to pull out a camera and turn it on if you have one strapped to your head the whole time?
True.
But again, if they
Because
got
then
the video,
then they
would you
won't see
believe it?
anything.
Well, I had
Yeah.
the one guy on my show, and I'm drawing a blank on his name now. Mark something or other.
Hmm.
But he said he was having trouble. He had all these like multiple experiences. He'd go to this one area and have these Bigfoot experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he could never get them on camera. He'd leave cameras set up, and he even had what he thought was one like come behind his camera and mess with the little screen where you could see what the camera was filming.
Mm-hmm.
While it was filming, and wave branches in front of it and stuff, but never got a picture of it. And he was describing another time where he said, I was walking away from my truck and I stopped to turn my camera on, and then I heard a wood knock, and he took it as the animals, or the creatures rather, were signaling that he was coming up the trail. I said, maybe they were signaling that you turn your camera on. You said it happened as soon as you turn your camera on. So there seems to be something, and it's so weird to talk about these things as if they're natural animals. It's very difficult, but there seems to be something in them that knows when cameras are on, which is really, which points to it not being a natural animal.
Well, isn't that something the Demon House guy, Keith, he brought up, that whatever was in his house could tell when he had the cameras turned on and it like bothered them or like it hurt them or something?
Oh, yeah.
And they avoided it.
Well, the infrared.
Yeah,
the infrared
they could tell
ones.
the infrared. Yeah, they didn't like it.
I had somebody here on Vancouver Island take me out into the woods, me and Matt Cook, when we were here. And he had made this assumption that they had cameras on. He showed us how they tied the trees, like the markers that they looked for. But he made this assumption that it's almost like they knew when they would put cameras, and he made a reference to trails that were made by the deers, and they knew what kind of trails that were more common by other animals, and they had this differentiation. And it was interesting because he said, we've put lots of cameras up all over the places, and when we put the cameras up, they seem to stop. There's none of these markers made, but once we take the cameras down, we find markers all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Ape in the Woods people tell you that if someone put a camera up in your living room, you'd notice. Well, my living room isn't 10,000 acres.
No.
I think that's a ridiculous.
Yeah, it was kind of weird, but that was his that's what he was telling us. Whether or not it's true or not, I don't know. But he, and I did feel it was weird because he was, he had markers like they apparently, I'm not a Bigfoot specialist, but he had this where they would take two more thin trees that were like thinner up on top, and they would almost tie them into an arch form. And they looked for these things, saying that Bigfoot, or as Sasquatch as it's called here, was them doing some kind of marker when they were marking trails where they could recognize where to go, or something like that.
But my point is that like you can hide cameras so incredibly well. I don't care.
Yeah.
If it's natural, it must somehow, and I don't think any natural animal has this ability. So, but it must somehow be able to hear the cameras or smell them, or in some way know that they're there, even though they're hidden incredibly well.
Like this Bigfoot, do they sense the sort of some kind of electrical emittance from them? I don't know. It sounds kind of far-fetched.
I think it's it almost becomes more logical to say that these are something that we don't understand, and they're not natural animals, and they're not going to be photographed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But animals can pick up on electromagnetic waves, and if something's more sensitive to it, it might be harder to photograph because they would stay away from it.
Yeah, the physical implication is that they're, really intelligent. If they're natural, that they're at least as intelligent as we are and able to see these differences or notice something's different.
Yeah.
The other thing, I've thought about this for a while. It'd be kind of an expensive experiment, but people track game using drones with FLIR cameras or like thermal cameras on them.
Mm-hmm.
And what would stop a Bigfoot researcher who, at least believes that there are Bigfoot in a certain area at night, they're active at night, from flying like a drone over the area and like looking for heat signatures and then.
Oh, it's been done, and people have gotten some really interesting footage from. I think that group with the guy who supposedly shot one a couple years back. They had some really interesting footage. I think was shot from a drone. Some FLIR footage that definitely looks like it shows 3 humanoid things kind of squatted down hiding behind a tree. I think it was 3. It was more than one. It was 2 or 3, I think. Really interesting, but completely inconclusive.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. I mean, it doesn't matter how much photo or video you get of these things. You're not going to prove one way or the other what they are. And that's the other thing. I mean, we can talk about this another time, but that certain documentary I was watching, they'd left apples and things like that, and these apples had been taken. I'm like, if that's true, then why aren't you looking for physical evidence like hair or something that got stuck in a tree? Because I'm sorry, but nothing walks to the woods and doesn't leave behind some sort of physical evidence. Even humans like shed hair as they're walking.
Sure.
There's no reason you couldn't find that kind of thing if it was something physical.
Yeah.
But those things aren't looked for. So
Albert Taylor at one point was working on small robots that he had done a couple that were doing like ghost hunting. And he was working on one to go out into the woods and look for Bigfoot. So they'd be basically like almost like drone robot type things. They'd just go out, they'd run around, and they'd be filming everything in the hope that sooner or later it would actually encounter a Bigfoot. He would put it in an area where there'd been a lot of sightings and see what happened. I don't know if he ever got the design finished. I had him on a few years ago, and I asked him about coming back on because I thought he would be an interesting person to talk about. I forget what subject it was, but he kind of didn't seem all that interested, so I just kind of left it. And then I don't know if he's still even doing that stuff as much anymore, unfortunately, but he had some really interesting ideas because once you take the human component out, what's left? And I remember he said in the ghost hunts he was picking stuff up without people being around.
Yeah, see, that goes against what I would typically expect to find. What's that? Humans are an integral part of that
necessary.
Experience.
Yeah. Unless it's a sort of a thing where, the things need to be observed in the cameras enough because eventually we will look at the footage.
That's interesting. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily need to be immediate. Like as long as there's some sort of causal observation down the line, it can manifest.
Someone a few years ago had left radio tags with some kind of sticky substance that the kind you track animals with up really high in trees, and I don't know why this wasn't pursued further. I thought this was really interesting, and I want to say this was in the Northwest somewhere. It attached to something and it traveled great distances, like really insane distances, and I forget where I heard or read about this. This might have been the Olympic Project as well. And they were just tracking these things for as long as whatever radio signal lasted. And it was just traveling insane distances, like more than any known animal would travel, short of a bird. But presumably these were, would have been too heavy for a bird, but I don't know. But they were going like...
Yeah, a bird would be my first assumption there.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been an owl or something. But for some reason, I think there was some way that they eliminated that possibility, and I can't remember enough about it. But to me, that would be very interesting to combine with the drones, with something you could actually track. Now you have a radio tag that you can follow, and then put a drone up there with FLIR.
On the other hand, maybe we should be going in the woods and doing rituals to summon a Bigfoot.
Well,
yeah,
There
not a bad idea.
Somebody's got a whole album based on that concept coming out.
Excellent.
If you believe in it.
So the when I was talking about the ghost hunting and stuff, a few times on the show, I've had the Ghost Hunters of the Finger Lakes Ghost Hunters or Ghost Hunters of the Finger Lakes. I forget which way it goes. I don't think they do a whole lot at this point. But getting to know the main guy there, I know he didn't have like the technical knowledge to fake stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had to clean up a bunch of their videos and EVPs, so I knew him to be an honest guy, and I knew the stuff they were picking up was legitimate. You know, like it wasn't being faked because he simply wouldn't have known how to fake it.
Right.
So looking at that stuff, you know, knowing that firsthand, I can be like, okay, this stuff's really interesting. And they had some really crystal clear EVPs and stuff. And of course, they always, any ghost hunters are going to have the ones where they're going, it says this. And you're going, no, it says, you know?
Yeah.
But that they had, I guess they were on the foundation of an old house or they were in an old abandoned house. And they must have had over 20 minutes worth of what sounded like people fighting, like a yelling argument. And they were there for a while, and they walked away from it going, well, nothing happened. There was nothing weird here. And then they're playing back the recorders, and this thing just keeps going. Like it's just a fight, you know, and there's things being thrown around and everything else. You're like, all right, that's really interesting. But again, you come back to, okay, so this is probably a legitimate anomaly, but it doesn't tell us what it is.
Right.
Is it a recording that somehow happened in the area? You know, the emotional impact of that fight somehow recorded itself on the environment. Is it a spirit playing games?
Yeah.
Is it, you know, the ghosts reenacting something that happened? Or is it something we haven't even thought of yet in some way that reality works?
I mean, at least you know it's something solid. It's not just people believing something. They actually do have something there, whether or not you know what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
But
when I was at that Haldeman Mansion paranormal thing over the summer, the some of the folks there had done a ghost hunt in the mansion the night before, and they played this really just this crystal clear EVP, and they said they captured this one room, and supposedly this room was I forget the kid's name, some kid named Bobby or something, like, you know, Robert or something, and the EVP very clearly says, you know, I am Robert or I am Bobby, whatever his name was. Very, very clearly said it, and very impressive EVP, but it does not mean that was a ghost.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
you know, that's that, and I tried to tell them that, and you could tell it just was like, they were like, well, no, of course that was him. He was there. He was saying that. Like, well, no, like you knew that was his room, and you were there. I'm not saying you said it, but
you could have created
projected it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, and people will always say, well, there's no evidence for, you know, there's no evidence for ghosts. There's no evidence for Bigfoot. Well, there's plenty of evidence. There's just not evidence of what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of solid, undisputable evidence. It's just that the evidence doesn't explain the phenomena or definitively say what it is.
Most of the stuff doesn't fit the scientific formula. That's why it's called paranormal. It doesn't fall with the normal parameters of something that's able to be tested with scientific capabilities. Yeah. And the stuff that is tested and is found to work, they go, well, that's kind of odd, but it doesn't prove anything.
Yeah.
So I think we lack
well, it doesn't. That's the problem.
I mean, that's the thing. In order to apply science to this, you need a basic theory or framework of what it is in the first place. Like the data itself, doesn't ever actually tell you anything. Like you have to use the data to support some sort of theory.
And awful that the processes aren't repeatable on a consistent basis enough to be able to get any kind of, anything verifiable. I mean, people go in and they get noises with EVPs and, they get little bits of things here and there, but none of it's ever really that solid.
Jeff Meldrum is the Bigfoot guy. That he's on a lot of the documentaries and so forth, and he's a expert in foot anatomy of primates. And he has studied Bigfoot casts and recognized these certain things that basically you'd have to be an expert on his level to fake these things in these casts. So that sort of convinced him that these are real creatures. And he has gotten like legit science to accept that what he has are casts of something alive with a foot left these casts, but that's where it stops. That's all they'll say.
Right.
So he has convinced them that much. The the dermal ridges, the mid-tarsal break, the various things which I can't speak to because I'm not an expert like he is. But he has got them to accept as much as something, alive left these footprints, but that's as far as they'll go because
Yeah.
there's no specimen.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I mean, that to me is a better position to have than like, another person that he's in a documentary with being like, well, I appreciate your skepticism, but I know this is a Bigfoot. Like,
Yeah.
And there's belief
Yeah.
again.
There you go.
Are we going to do that show in here? Because if not, I'll do it on Strange Familiars.
No, either way. And what is that documentary you're referring to?
it's Discovering Bigfoot. It's on Netflix if you
Okay.
want to check it out.
We-
It's a documentary, all right.
we'll talk about that either on this show or Strange Familiars.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll see how it goes.
Alrighty.
What was I going to say here? Oh yeah, and that's when I started all this, I said this stuff is on the fringe, and part of that is because we can't replicate it too easily.
Mhm.
You can't just say, if you say, well, there's an endangered animal out there, like the Tasmanian devil. They kept going, well, the Tasmanian devil is dead, and didn't they just find an actual live Tasmanian devil in the last few years or something?
No, they haven't found it.
They haven't found it. Okay, there was some animal that they thought was extinct that they found and said, okay, well, there was at least a few
that
left.
happens all the
Here's
time.
one.
But the thylacine still
Right.
has not been, which is kind of surprising to me because Australia is a huge country, and it amazes me.
But it's from Tasmania, I believe. And Tasmania is a weird, hard to access little island.
Okay, I'm thinking of something else. I'm sorry.
If I'm not mistaken, and I
Yeah.
could be. I'm sure someone will correct me if I am.
Tasmanian tiger or something, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe that's it.
And I think that someone got a game cam pic or something of it. There's something something came up with it in recent years where they thought it was done, and they were like, oh wait,
But that's the thing. There you have an animal that we know at one point existed, that we then get photographic evidence of, and you can say, okay, that's that animal. But with a Bigfoot, we have yet to prove it exists because we don't have fossil record. We don't have undeniable corpse alive. We don't have a living one in a zoo somewhere. We don't have anything that we can nail down and say, yes, this creature at one point existed. Maybe it still does. And then a picture might be worth something. But for as long as you can't prove it ever existed in the first place, it's very hard to nail down. If we knew there was extraterrestrial life, if we knew we were flooded with extraterrestrial life and we saw something come down from space, we could say, okay, it's probably extraterrestrial life. But since we don't have any evidence that, that there is extraterrestrial life, I believe there is, I think it's everywhere, and B, that it's ever come here on a spaceship, we can't make that assumption that we're dealing with extraterrestrials or interdimensionals or any of that stuff. We say interdimensional very easily, but we don't know if there's other dimensions.
right.
So until we can prove 100% or as close to 100% as anything ever gets proven that other dimensions exist that are separate from our own, saying interdimensional is just as much of a throwaway as saying extraterrestrial because we don't know those things actually exist. And that's why this stuff is so hard to prove and how come it remains on that fringe.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why I think it's important that people engage with the material and not just speculate, but also work within it as well and do their own research. I mean, that, like I would say that, I at least feel like there are not necessarily other dimensions, but other states of being because I've had personal experience with it, that I feel there is like, technology that allows you to experience those states of being. So, as much as it's fun to speculate and talk about the stuff, I think people need to remember too that in some cases you can engage with it. I mean, that's why I do respect people like going out in the woods and looking for Bigfoot, because I'm like, they
Sure.
are, they're doing the work, even if they sometimes have major assumptions about what it is or jump to conclusions, and maybe that holds them back from things that they could discover regarding it. I do respect that people are doing the work.
I always just, I mean, I've had some experiences that I have made me, force me to believe that it's something else other than, just the materials here. But at the same time, I try to keep a really critical view on things and not just be totally ideological. And I like to have things that are solid at the same time. But at the same time, I've had experiences that were more than just random. They were synchronistic. They were, they just, I won't get into them for time's sake, but they just told me that there is something that's happening other than just material. But you have to also keep a balance between material, the world, and skepticism and experiences as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to get suckered into it, but at the same time, you don't want to dismiss something that there might actually be something
it's
to.
like you have to look at each individual case and sort of explore it as much as you can.
Yeah, and it's the personal experience that's important. I mean, that's what I try to tell people to do magic, because I'm like, if you don't believe in magic, like nothing I ever say or do is going to make you believe in it. I mean, like you need to just try it, and if it works, well, then, the world's certainly a lot stranger than what you thought it was. If it doesn't work, it just reinforces your belief that it's not real in the first place. So you have nothing to lose. If you really believe in Bigfoot, if you really care about Bigfoot research, then, go look for Bigfoot. If you really believe in demons, and you're not scared of them, summon a demon or two.
Yeah.
And that type of stuff, when it comes to the occult and magic, has been, the media has ridiculed that in a very different way than it has like Bigfoot and UFOs and stuff like that. Because it's turned it into this like almost materialistic system. Look at anything that involves magic or the occult. In movies and TV shows, it's very, they almost take the spiritual element out of it.
Yeah.
So it kind of demystifies it a little bit.
Well, I mean, you have that, but you also have, on the other hand, like really popular, essentially like quasi magical systems, like what is that thing called, The Secret? Things like that, and those are like mainstream popular things. Like soccer moms are doing that, and
True.
like you have a mainstream sort of popular magic that has had all of the I guess mysticism and ritual like stripped out of it. And then it's not necessarily a bad thing. If it gets people doing magic, then that's good. But on one hand, they ridicule people who do magic, but then on the other hand, like they all do magic themselves either. They all do that too.
The law of attraction is so simplistic, though. It's like Sesame Street version of learning, right? Yeah.
Well, it's the stripped down version of what Jane Roberts Seth initially was trying to explain about how reality worked.
Yeah.
Except Seth wasn't just like, you get what you focus on. Seth was like, no, reality doesn't work that way. Seth gave you the good and bad of all this stuff and how it actually interacted and how like symbols worked on our unconscious and all this other stuff. Whereas all that's been kind of taken away, and it's like, look, just wish for what you want.
Yeah.
And that's the secret.
It's
like, okay.
It's a catalog from Sears.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, sometimes that actually does work.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you can just focus on something and you'll get it, but other times it doesn't, and there are reasons for that.
Yeah.
It's not, the whole isn't that simple.
Yeah. That's something that like Connor Habib and Gordon White were talking about in the latest episode of Rune Soup, that not many people these days just stop and say, like, what do I want? Not what am I scared of? Like, what am I worried about? Like, but what do I want out of my life? Or what do I want in 2018? What do I want the world to look like? What do I want my life to look like? So if that sort of system causes people to at least examine themselves in that light, I think it's valuable.
Yeah, exactly. So we've gone, I think, over 2 hours now.
Wow.
Is there anything else anyone wants to say about the multitude of things we have discussed here this 2 hours?
It's all demons.
Before we wrap it up.
We went down a rabbit hole.
Everything is demons.
It is everything. It's all demons, and that you should summon them and bind them and make them do what you want
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So bind a Bigfoot.
Yeah, you should bind the Bigfoot.
And if it doesn't work, you can just use whatever spiritual system you believe in to push it away.
Exactly.
Oops,
Yeah.
I screwed up. Well,
No
the
risk
power
at
of
all.
Christ compels you.
I think I learned that Bob Dobbs flies in UFOs
yes.
and Bigfoot is a ghost, but they're all demons.
But they're all demons. That's what I'm saying.
Therefore, Fae.
Demons.
Therefore,
Yeah. But you know, at the same time, you know, as frustrating as it is to see someone just dismiss all this stuff as demons, again, some of these people, I think, are trying to, in their own view, help. You know, they're like, be careful, these things are demons, because they really believe it. It's kind of like the Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, they come knock at your door, and most people are going, oh, jeez, really? And when you really look at it, they thoroughly believe what they're saying, and they think you're going to hell, and they're trying to very nicely help you.
hmm yeah.
You may not agree with them. You may think they're completely wrong, but their motives are the best they could possibly be.
Well, everybody's coming from a good place, unless you're a Scientologist
Well,
or
I
something.
would-
I don't know. But, well, even those people
I don't
believe
know.
they're doing the right thing. I got to watch what I say.
Yeah.
And in the sense of you know, facing up to this stuff, like Wren was saying, or sort of meeting the dwellers on the threshold, you know, it can be a scary place and it can be fraught with pitfalls. So in a way, maybe they are providing a service in a sense to those who aren't ready to face that. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's just, it doesn't seem, for me, it seems to be, it's just not an answer. It's just another name to lay upon, you know, the phenomenon.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I guess.
Anyone else? Okay.
I guess either you can live your life terrified of the world and scared of everything around you, or you can approach your life from a position of confidence and like approach your life with a sense that you know, you're in control of it and your will can be exerted. And you know, if you're in that sort of situation where you feel like everything's demons, that you're surrounded by evil forces that are trying to hurt you, like try thinking the other way around. Like try thinking that, you know, no, I'm a human, nothing can hurt me. All this stuff is, you know, these things are like dust in the wind to me. And just,
I don't know. I've been slapped around pretty good by things that shouldn't exist. So
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe that's the test, you know. Maybe that's. But
Well,
you
it is.
survived.
It
you
is.
survived, Seriah. You know.
and it taught me quite a bit.
Exactly. So
Yeah, but
it
to
was a
be
learning
fair,
experience.
you do invite stuff into you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know, you probably deserve some of this stuff, you know?
Yes.
You
Guys,
demon inviter.
I actually want to take Seriah out and do some investigations with him, because I think he's going to be incredibly fun, where most people are like standing there like, what is that sound? I'm pretty sure he's just being like, I'm going to walk over and see what that sound is.
Hi, my name's Seriah.
Well, yes, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah, exactly.
If I see a Bigfoot in the woods, I'm going to be chasing it. I don't care.
Oh,
I don't
go
care
for
if
the
Yeah, I'm going to ride it.
Hmm.
I'm going to have
go for
myself
the
up.
experience.
Yeah.
See, if I saw a Bigfoot and it looked like a flesh and blood animal, I might be hesitant to approach it,
Yeah.
because it could physically rip you apart.
Not if you've got beef jerky.
Right, of course.
Or not if
whereas-
you lift like I do.
Oh god, dude, those games.
Whereas
I wanna
if-
be like that guy in that video where he squares up with the kangaroo. You know, I want to see what a Bigfoot can take. You know, I want to see if he can take my left hook.
are you talking about the guy who just punched the
Yeah.
kangaroo that was like attacking his dog?
Yeah.
And then the kangaroo just looks like insulted, and he's like, "Well, fine." And leaves.
Yeah, exactly.
Right then, I'll
but
just
you know-
hop away.
As much as this stuff fascinates me rather than scares me, I would be more hesitant dealing. You know, like I'm more worried about people
Hmm.
than I am about paranormal stuff.
Right.
Like even though I'm not easily intimidated or frightened by things, I would rather deal with a shadow in the forest than some crazy guy with a gun.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd much rather run across whatever it is I saw out there again than even a hunter, just because you never know with people.
Yeah, and you never know when they're going to accidentally, I saw movement. Shoot!
Exactly.
I got myself a Tim.
I should
all
have
right.
worn my antlers and brown sweatshirt.
So, Ro, where can people find you regularly?
They can find our show at www.projectarchivist.com, iTunes, any podcast aggregator. You can find us on Twitter, and you can find our Facebook page as well. And we try to take a different, unusual, and sometimes humorous look at the strange and wonderful world around us.
And you are very successful at that.
Yeah, we try. That's debatable.
Tim,
Yes.
where can people find you?
Strangefamiliars.com for the podcast. You can also find other links there. Stonebreath.bandcamp.com. We were talking about the Cryptids album. That actually has the Bigfoot 911 call on it. You have to get the CD. Couldn't put it on the digital download. And got a new thing coming out that Joshua helped me name, Wilderness Geist, which is a audio ritual with the intent to summon cryptids.
Nice. Melissa?
Oh, I'm got my website up at scarletart.rocks, and that's Scarlet with 2 T's. I'm also on Facebook with @ScarletArt7, or you can just look up Melissa Martell on Facebook.
And Wren?
You can find me at liminalroom.com and on Twitter as at Mr_Apol, APOL.
All right. I thank all of you. This has been a fascinating conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks.
Thank you.
And a special thanks to our Patreons who are pledging at the $10 or above level. John Eddy, Chris Elmquist, Patricia Giaquinta, Allison Cook, Robert Groom, Christopher Sheehan, Roland Belstedt, Alfred Tuttle, Carla Mahoney, and Gabriel Zero. Thank you very much. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.